TV, radio and online, Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News.
You're with GB News Live. I'm Mark Longhurst, and never in the field of football has so much been so expected by so many of so few. Yes, it's chocks away for the new Battle of Britain in the desert of Doha. Wales and England facing off in their do-or-die match at the Ahmed bin Ali Stadium. Anything less than a win for Wales means they're out. England have to regain their fans' pride after a lacklustre performance against the USA. So, all to play for, and we've got the very latest for you live from Qatar. The winds of change appear to be blowing for the Prime Minister. Rishi Sunak now believed to be ready to compromise on a new generation of onshore wind farms. He's been battling a rebellion by Tory MPs, including Boris Johnson and Liz Truss, but now Downing Street's indicating the next U-turn may be about to blow in. Do no harm. Social media sites will no longer have to take down material designated legal but harmful as part of the government's proposed plans for online safety. Culture Secretary Michelle Donnellan rejecting claims it could all make safeguards for children weaker. But before all that kicks off, the latest news headlines with Rosie.
Good afternoon, it's 2 minutes past 12. I'm Rosie Wright, keeping you up to date. The number of people in England and Wales describing themselves as Christian has fallen below half of the population for the first time. The latest data from the Office for National Statistics shows 46.2% identified as Christian when the census was last carried out. That compares to over 59% a decade ago. The number of people who say they have no religion has increased by 12%. The government's given the go-ahead to build the Sizewell C nuclear power plant and committed £700 million for the scheme. The plant, which is being developed by the French energy giant EDF, will be built in Suffolk. Ministers say the move will create 10,000 highly skilled jobs and provide reliable, low-carbon power to the equivalent of 6 million homes for more than 50 years. The Business Secretary, John Chapp, says the announcement means greater energy independence for the UK.
It's a combination between taxpayers' money but also private investment, and that's, as you rightly say, is the next stage. But it's a sign of, if you like, the confidence that the British government has in nuclear as part of our energy mix. And a very, very important point, which has been driven home so clearly by Putin's illegal invasion of Ukraine and all that's done to energy prices, that we must have a mix of energy in this country.
A section of the new online safety bill has been removed following criticism by some Conservatives that it posed a risk to free speech. The amendment means big tech, like social media sites, will no longer be required to remove harmful material if it's deemed to be legal. The online safety bill is due to return to Parliament next week after repeatedly being delayed. The Culture Minister, Michelle Donnellan, told GB News the most important part of the bill is strengthening accountability and transparency.
In terms of illegal content or also harmful content towards children, that will no longer be allowed on social media platforms. If they evade the law, then they could face fines up to 10% of their global turnover, and that is billions of pounds. That will certainly hit them where it hurts and be a strong deterrent to prevent them from acting in the way that they've done up to now, which has been putting profits before people and before children.
The Shadow Work and Pension Secretary says Labour's concerned the change is a major watering down of the legislation.
Well, there is concern about the fact that they appear to be weakening that bill, but we certainly do need a form of online safety bill to protect people. We've seen people be driven into the most tragic of circumstances because of content that they've been able to find online. And I'm a parent, I've got two girls, an 11-year-old and a 9-year-old. I mean, it actually terrifies me to think that they might be able to find horrible material, particularly at stages in their life when they are vulnerable, because we all know adolescence is a vulnerable time.
China's ambassador to the UK has been summoned to the Foreign Office over a diplomatic row following the arrest and alleged beating of a BBC journalist covering COVID protests. A heavy police presence has been reported in several cities in China to deter further protests after unrest over the weekend. The UK Prime Minister said the UK's golden era of relations with China is over. The head of NATO says Russia's trying to use winter in Ukraine as a weapon of war. Speaking at a meeting of foreign ministers in Bucharest, Jens Stoltenberg urged member states to increase their supply of military assistance. He's also called on countries to pledge more winter aid as civilians struggle with the cold and dark due to Russian attacks on infrastructure. Mr. Stoltenberg says President Putin's targeting of civilian infrastructure only strengthens NATO's resolve.
There's a brutal war and there is a deliberate attack on critical services, heating, light, water, gas. These brutal attacks against critical civilian infrastructure is only encouraging NATO allies to do even more.
3 refugees have been rescued in Spain after they were discovered clinging to the rudder of an oil tanker. The stowaways were spotted as the vessel anchored in the port of Las Palmas in Gran Canaria. The ship had sailed from Nigeria. It's believed the migrants survived 11 days at sea. Spain's Maritime Safety and Rescue Societies say the individuals have been transferred to port where they're receiving medical attention for mild dehydration. It is all to play for tonight in Qatar as England and Wales go head-to-head in the final match of Group B. To get through to the knockouts, Wales must beat England and hope the USA draw with Iran. Meanwhile, Gareth Southgate's side are looking to bounce back from their draw with the US and qualify as top of the group. You're up to date on GB News. We'll bring you more as it happens. Now back to Mark.
Rosie, thanks very much. So the Battle of Britain takes off at 7 this evening as Wales and England battle in the deserts of Doha for the final Group B game. Iran, USA and the other teams too, the current Group B table. England sitting top, Iran second on 3 points, USA on 2, Wales down the bottom there on only 1. But here's the rub. All 4 teams could still qualify. So a brief look at all the various scenarios showing the 4 teams can go into the 16 knockout stages, possibly. Wales need to beat England by at least 1 goal difference and hope that Iran and USA play out a draw against each other. Wales would go through then on a superior goal difference. Iran could be through for the first time ever if they beat the USA, but a draw would also be enough if Wales lose to England. USA, well, they have to win against Iran to survive. All clear? No, me neither. However, here's a man who does know what's going on. Paul Hawkins, our man in Doha. Bore da Paul Bach Shurichi. In Welsh, that is, of course, because clearly you've been conversing with many Welsh fans out there and getting the very latest. Set us the scene, if you will.
Yeah, hi Mark. Really good to talk to you from, frankly, the first floor of the Intercontinental Hotel in Doha, where one of the many pre-match Wales fans parties have been organised. Forget the red wall, it's more like the red floor, because they're basically taken over the whole of the floor. Have a look over here. We've got Wales fans congregating, supping on many of the pints packages that you can get for about 80 quid along with a meal. And then if we look down the bar this way, you can see Wales fans all the way into the distance. And this is only one of the bars, by the way, one of the bars on the first floor. We can actually speak to some Wales fans now, just behind us here. Excuse me, sir, what's your name?
Jamie Williams.
Jamie, really good to talk to you. First of all, just talk us through. You're with these other people here, and I thought this was your family, but actually you only met these people at the airport just now.
Well, anyone from Wales is part of the family, but we met at the airport, correct, yes.
Yeah, and you're already having a beer. How are you feeling? Have you just phoned in from, is it Dubai or Wales?
I'm from Wales, and we stayed in Abu Dhabi.
Yeah.
And we've flown over today for the game tonight, and then we fly back to Abu Dhabi tomorrow morning. Then we fly home to Wales on Thursday.
Wow, okay.
So 4 flights in 5 days.
Okay, a lot of travelling. And you've bought one of these packages, is that right?
Correct.
Yeah, and just talk us through what's involved. How much is it and why do you do it?
Literally, I've got some friends out here, and I said, guys, what have you been doing, where have you been going? And they said, look, if you go on walesinmotion.com, it was literally where the fans are all meeting. You pre-order some drinks, buy some drinks and tokens, and then it gets you all together in the same hotel to build up the atmosphere.
Yeah, so it sounds good. Let's just have a quick word with this gentleman over here. Sir, how are you feeling about the game tonight?
Oh, I'm looking forward to it because I think we're going to start playing.
Yeah.
Because we only one half we played well. The first half of the first game, we weren't very good.
Yeah.
Second half, much better. The last game, not very good.
Yeah.
So I think we'll do all right this time. And it's England as well, isn't it?
What would it mean to you to beat England?
Oh, that would be fantastic. I mean fantastic. And I'm very confident.
Yeah.
Because England didn't play well in the last game.
Yeah.
They played very well in the first game.
Yeah.
But once England got a bit of pressure on them, they're not very good.
It's either going to be a really rubbish game or a really great game.
Oh, it's going to be a great game.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Imam Wahid, thank you very much.
That's all right. Thank you.
Thank you very much for speaking to us. That's how the fans are feeling at the moment. More fans are arriving at the hotel at the moment. Let's hear now from Rob Page, the Wales manager, on how he's feeling and hoping to invoke some of that underdog spirit that we've seen from the Saudis and the Japanese in the game tonight. Here he is.
This tournament has shown that every team is beatable. I really do. So, of course, England are beatable. They've got a wonderful pool of players to choose from, I might add. So, whatever team he puts on that pitch is going to be a tough challenge for us. And, of course, they're going to be favourites to win the games.
Yeah, so that's how Rob Page is feeling. Of course, England v Wales doesn't need that much of a build-up. It's a British derby, and that's why Gareth Southgate is acutely aware that Wales will be putting in that extra effort.
It's like any two countries whose borders are next to each other. There's a competitive rivalry. For me, it's a great sporting rivalry. We've got to focus on performance. We've got to play well. You know, we've got to bring our quality to the table and give that the best opportunity we have of making the difference on the pitch.
Well, that's about the football, Paul, and we won't get the teams, of course, till 6 o'clock. Big questions. Will Harry Kane start? Will Gareth Bale start? Will he last the match? But off the pitch, there's this bigger story there for all those fans, of course, enjoying their time after 64 years waiting for a World Cup. And you've spoken to a man who's got rather a big bar bill, £1 million spent on 6 tons of alcohol for the occasion.
Yeah, this is Rodri Williams, who's one of the fan organisers. He's been telling us about the kind of effort that goes into organising something like this and what it means to the Welsh fans. Here he is.
Six Nations rugby, big occasion. Home Nations football match, massive occasion. This is the World Cup. This might never happen ever again. So that's how special it is for everybody, for Welsh fans, for English fans, that we're here facing each other. And what makes it even more incredible is that it's all up for grabs. 4 teams are going for those 2 places tonight. Yes, some are in the driving seat. We've only got 1 point. England have got 3. Iran have got 3. But that's how tight it is. And when you're Welsh, you only need a glimmer of hope to grab onto something. And look, that's why we love sport. That's why we love the FIFA World Cup.
Well, as you know, Paul, Rodri's an old colleague of mine. It sounds as if he's been shouting so much already he's lost his voice. Let's hope he's got enough to continue commentating on the game. But, I mean, he makes a point. It is that glimmer of hope. What's your own prediction for the game?
Well, you know what? I think Wales are going to win and both teams are going to go through. I'm going to go for a Wales 2-1 win, but I do think both teams will go through. I just think that Wales are the impetus is on them to win, right? They need to do more to win, and so they'll put in that extra effort. And I do think England will play well, but I just think Wales will edge this one, which will give us a great story heading into the round of 16 at the weekend.
Yeah, you're speaking as a journalist now, aren't you? You want the story for tomorrow as well. But we shall see, and back to you, of course, as the day progresses towards the 7 o'clock showdown. Thank you for the moment in Doha, but let's return to the studio. And joining us now, former professional footballer Jason Cundy, now an even more professional pundit, of course, someone else who knows what's going on.
Good afternoon.
The question is, what does Southgate and what does Page do in terms of their big talisman? And that is Harry Kane for England, and that is Gareth Bale for Wales, because you're totemic, both of them.
Well, first with Wales, Bale's got to start. You know, he is their talisman. Hasn't played well. Wales haven't played well.
No.
But if there is one man that knows how to drag Wales from a situation like this, it's him, right? Let's move on to Kane. Slightly different. England have almost qualified. He's carried a bit of a knock. Before the tournament, Conte did come out and say that Kane's actually a little bit tired. I think it'd be a good time to rest Kane. Actually, I think it'd be a good time to shuffle the pack, give some of the other players a chance.
Yeah.
We haven't seen much of Rashford. There's one or two other players that might get their opportunity. Grealish, Foden. There's a huge cover.
I was going to say, there's a certain name I've written down here,
Yeah.
Phil Foden. and Southgate was sort of obviously on the defensive a bit about him, but why hasn't he been playing him? I mean, and he's not played that much for Manchester City either.
No.
Is he carrying something that, you know, he's not revealed yet?
No, I don't think so. I think it's about the shape of the team and what he wants to get out of that team. He's a very pragmatic manager, Gareth. He knows how to get out of a group. And if you look back over the last tournament, the Euros, the same noise was about Grealish.
Yeah.
And eventually Grealish found himself into the team. So he has to navigate his way out of the group. He does that well. England weren't brilliant against USA. In fact, you know, there needs to be some improvements. But it's about getting out of the group.
Yeah.
And it depends what shape he'll play, because Walker's back today as well.
But it was almost as if Southgate, in the news conference afterwards, was pleased with the 0-0 and indicating that playing out the back was the good way to go. And you know, cautious is good. I mean, he really needs to change that, doesn't he, against Wales and go in the attack and get as many goals as early as possible?
See, Ben, it's about getting out of the group. And if he needs a draw, which is what Wales have got to win. So
exactly.
the impetus is on them to come out and attack us, not the other way around. And Gareth, as I said, is a very pragmatic manager. He's a manager that will go into it with his eyes wide open, knowing what Wales are going to come at us with.
Yeah.
But he doesn't have to win this game. Now, of course, we want to top the group. And I think as the game is, we're talking about a 90-minute game, the bench can clearly have a big impact on the way the game goes. So I think that Kane will start on the bench. I think we may well see him. But in terms of England, we don't need to go out and win this game. It's up to Wales to come onto us, which I'm hoping that will play into Southgate's hands.
We've got this skyline there of Doha. Paul Hawkins was saying it's getting a little cooler than it has been. But should we reflect that, you know, these players are in the middle of a Premier season?
Yep.
It is hot out there. They've been training, they've been playing. You know, it's a difficult ask for them to go 100% for the full 90 minutes, or 99 minutes, or 100 minutes as the match has been getting to.
But I think that's why Gareth now is in a position where he can actually shuffle his pack. It wouldn't surprise me if there's 3, maybe 4 changes, because Walker's coming back in. If he wants to go into the next stage of the tournament and play a 3 at the back, we might find that today he does that. He might change his shape to get Walker in. Walker hasn't played for a good 6-7 weeks now with this injury that he's had. So he's fit now, available. Does he play Walker at right back, or does he play Walker at right-hand side of a 3? They're the questions that are going to remain unanswered until we get the team, as you said, at 6.
We have to balance freshness with stability. Does that actually mean rotation?
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah.
You know, so he wants to make sure that we go into the last 16. It was slightly different in Russia when we played Belgium. We'd already qualified.
Yeah.
So we knew. We didn't know whether we were going to finish top or second in the group. Belgium beat us and we finished second. On this occasion, we know we've qualified almost. Mathematically, we still get knocked out, but we want to top the group.
Who would be a manager, eh? Well, on that very note, let's speak to someone who knows. Yes, Sam Allardyce. Big Sam is joining us. Sam Allardyce, thank you very much for your time here on GB News.
How are you?
Well, very well, discussing the big showdown at 7 and, you know, does Kane start? Does Gareth Bale start? First of all, on Harry Kane, what would you do? Because there's a lot of comment in the papers about his ankle, that after 15 minutes it starts, you know, ballooning up and so on, and there's, you know, a long time to go if they make it through in the competition.
It's a very brave man that rests the captain and probably your leading goal scorer that won the Golden Boot. But it's the choices you need to make as the manager. If you are the manager, you need to make those brave choices. And only Gareth and Harry could know whether he's 100% fit or not. I have to say, towards the end of the game against the USA, he did look fatigued. He wasn't limping, but he did look fatigued, as well as many other players. So that would be the biggest decision of all he has to make, whether he decides to put him on and start and then make the substitution, or whether he decides to go with Callum Wilson and use Harry if he thinks he needs to. It's a big debate. The rest of the team could be changed and can be equally as good as the person who played in the last game. Whoever replaces him, for me, is equally as good. That's why England have the best squad in the World Cup.
Yeah, and clearly when we'll come and talk to you about Wales in a moment, but England have got that strength in depth in terms of the quality of players. But just on that note that you're talking about, how important is it to have a captain like just to glue the team together, never mind about their actual individual performance on the pitch?
Well, this squad, I think, has always showed a great togetherness. I think that since they've been together and grown together, both on and off the field, they've had a very good rapport between each other, and that's very, very important. And you've heard, Gary Neville, particularly in the past, talk about sometimes when they got together, that great team, it was a bit fractious on occasions. This doesn't seem to be the case with the England squad. They do seem to pull it all together and all push and pull in the same direction. So the backroom staff supporting them hopefully will be an energised performance tonight and a victory.
Yeah, well, we've just seen pictures of Gareth Bale and similar questions, of course, for Rob Page about what he does with Bale, bearing in mind his age and not, full fitness given the number of games he hasn't been able to play in. Is that the person that England should be fearing? That, again, he's a talisman for the team?
Absolutely. I think that he needs to be kept an eye on. I think he needs to go out there and shut him down whenever he receives the ball. He is the most dangerous man in possession in the Wales team. Of course, there is a big threat for England if Kiefer Moore plays. Aerially, if they're allowed to get balls in the box, he will cause the England defence lots of problems, as we've seen him do before, both with Bournemouth and with Wales. So that could be a particular area they need to take care of. But and of course, Ramsey's had a bit of stick as well. But these are quality players on the ball, and I think Wales will need some quality on the ball if they are to do anything against England.
Yeah, and one maybe forgiving some performances given the heat and the conditions out there, of course, which perhaps we forget. But we'll be asking everyone for their predictions. You, most of all, with all your expertise, what's the scoreline going to be, you reckon?
I'm doing 3-1 for England.
Oh, right. OK. Well, we shall hold you to that. But thank you very much indeed for joining us here on GB News. Enjoy the match. Thanks very much for your time.
Absolute
Sam.
pleasure.
OK. Right. Let's go back to the fans and we can bring in the Kirby estate in southeast London, that celebrated place where 3 lions, hundreds of flags draped across the estate, has been featuring in the newspapers. Our London reporter Alice Porter is there. And Alice, I think you were even featuring the estate teacup or tea mug a little earlier. They're going for it in a big way down there.
That's right. I was given an honorary Kirby estate mug, which I have to say was very welcome, with some tea first thing this morning. In fact, I've had great hospitality down here on the estate, which has become quite iconic really over the last few years for its wonderful decorations of St George's flags, which have been bedecked across the estate, ready for tonight's match, of course. And I'm joined by Charlie Carlisle, who is one of the people who's sort of involved with putting up the flags. And I know your mum was, in fact, one of the first people to start putting flags up about 10 years ago. So she kind of really started this tradition, didn't she?
Yeah, she did. So she put out a flag. And then one of the neighbours opposite saw a flag and he was like, oh, I need to get one bigger. And then Mum put another one out and then they put another one out and then it just sort of grew. And then Chris sort of thought, oh, hang on a minute, we've got something here. Let's see what we can do. And it's just turned into this massive phenomenon of like hundreds of flags.
It looks amazing. I mean, for those of you who are watching, I mean, we have got them across the whole estate. We've got all these different England flags. We've also got some ones from other countries as well. But it really does look amazing. I mean, what is the process like of getting these flags out? I mean, is it you're trying to do it without anyone seeing?
Yeah, so they're actually named the Flag Ninjas.
Flag. Your mum's a flag
ninja.
A flag ninja. What is a flag ninja? I want to be one.
So they're basically like you go to bed one night and when you wake up in the morning, there's just all these flags up. They just sort of tend to appear from nowhere, or
just like Father Christmas or something.
Literally, just like Father Christmas. They're like the Father Christmas of St George's flags.
I love that, the Father Christmas of St George's flag. So let's talk about today. How are you feeling about the match this evening?
I'm apprehensive and nervous. I think if England step up their game straight up, we've got a good chance of winning it.
Now, I know you've got 4 kids, so what is going to be the sort of tradition tonight? Because I know in the summer people were sort of out when the Lionesses were playing. Obviously, it's a little chillier now in November in South London. So what are you going to be doing to kind of bring that buzz?
I'm thinking probably just get a takeaway, some picky food, lots of fizzy drink and sit in front of the TV.
Some picky food in front of the TV. That sounds lovely. Well, listen, thank you so much for talking to us, Charlie. And I'm fascinated by this. Was a flag ninja. Flag ninja. Thank you for the terminology. There we go. All good things to learn on the Kirby estate, which I think is the most patriotic estate in London, possibly even the whole of England. They're all getting ready for the kick-off at 7 o'clock tonight.
Alice and the flag ninjas of Bermondsey, thank you very much indeed. We'll be back to you a little later, see if any more appear there, although they do seem to have enough for the moment. Anyway, let's head back to the studio. Jason is still with us. You were enjoying all those flags. It's quite a sight, isn't it?
What's it going to look like if England get to the final?
Yeah, well, good point. Any chance of them doing that?
There's a chance. There's a chance. I mean, we have to make sure that we get things right today, then move forward. Looks like we're probably going to play Senegal. Don't know until that group's decided. But I think everyone's anticipating France in the quarterfinals, and then you're coming up against a serious contender. Yeah. That's where possibly we will fall down, depending on suspensions and injuries and various different other things. But look, let's get tonight out of the way first. But yes, that's the eye. We got the eye on the big prize.
Yeah, but just to talk about outside the football, it is a great occasion when people come together. They're all in front of the TV, a bit like Morecambe and Wise used to be at Christmas. As we say, we have the nibbles, we have and it's football actually becoming a bit more than the game, isn't it?
It is, and it's the social aspect of it as well. I was in a pub on Friday, and when it was a disappointing performance, but the way that everyone come together, I'm sure it's going to be like that down in Swansea and Cardiff. That's going to be pretty crazy down there.
We will be there live
as well. But yes, you're absolutely right. And because it's a weekday and it's in the evening, families will inevitably be together. Hopefully, England do qualify for the knockout stage, and the next game's on a Saturday and Sunday, so the pubs might be slightly busier.
Right, now we've got the skyline up there, a bit of cloud which maybe could sort of cool things down a bit. We have to say you were an English international, under 21s, so you know what they have to go through in terms of the mental and the physical preparation. What will they be doing out there now, given that it's an evening game? And the fact that, they've got to think through what they're going to do. Yeah, I mean, this preparation would have been in place for months about this. They know when the kick-off times were, they know exactly what they want to do. So they'll be planning for this event now, because it's in the evening, it's late to kick-off compared to the one that we had. I mean, the first game was a 10 o'clock, 1 o'clock kick-off the first game. So the preparations will be different depending on the time of day. But these guys know what they're doing. Tournament football is so well organised now. The amount of people behind the scenes, we just see the... So dietitians...
and all sorts of people behind the hotel setting everything up, making sure the players are comfortable. So, there's a lot of preparation. They will have everything done, don't worry.
And again, the captain's role, Harry Kane, very important, maybe settling down some of the younger players, keeping things calm. Yeah, and there's more experienced players. Kyle Walker's another one of them. You've got some experienced heads in there, you've got some younger ones, some less experienced, and you'll be leaning on those. Whether Harry starts tonight or not, his role is absolutely crucial. Jason, for the moment, thank you very much indeed. But just to let you know, we will be bringing in Cardiff, Wrexham, and reflecting on the Wales squad as well. So I've got my red tie on too. Coming up, a new nuclear power plant to be built in Suffolk, all to make UK energy secure. More on that multi-million-pound deal coming up after this break.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Friday and Sunday night from 9, it's Mark Dolan Tonight.
We're on the same page again. There's something good happening.
Let Ian finish. Don't be such a cranky.
That mini budget was the tip of the iceberg.
And on Saturday, my show just got bigger. From 8, it's Mark Dolan's Saturday Night In.
You can't govern a country if you can't speak. Stop talking.
My God, we reached the end. I've never been early in my life. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, you know.
We're on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
And it's about standards and public life. No, I'll tell you what's hypocrisy, Narendra.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin.
We believe in the UK.
No bias, no censorship.
It just doesn't make sense to me. He wasn't doing his job as Chancellor.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News.
And welcome back to GB News Live. Now, after some uncertainty, the government has announced it's definitely going ahead with building a new nuclear power plant in Suffolk, the aim to try to improve our energy security. Well, let's get more with Tom Harwood, our political correspondent, who's been getting up to speed with us. Tom, this is the Sizewell C, 700 million at the moment, although the bill might be a bit higher, all part of this effort to get our energy supply secure.
That's certainly the case. Now, the previous government had also committed to this, as had the government before then. But of course, we've had so much political turmoil over the last half year or so that there had been some questions over whether or not Rishi Sunak's government, with its ideas of restricting the amount that the government spends, whether they would or not go forward with Sizewell C. Well, Jeremy Hunt confirmed after much speculation in the autumn statement that indeed £700 million would be going ahead to this project, in part that amount of money to buy out the Chinese state investment, which had initially been part of this proposal. The government is using this £700 million of taxpayers' money not only to go towards the capital costs of this new infrastructure, this third nuclear plant at Sizewell, replacing Sizewell B, which of course is being decommissioned after many decades of service. This is money that is also spent to buy out the Chinese, as the government has decided that foreign state infrastructure from countries like China may well be a security risk to the United Kingdom, not least with regard to our energy security as the years go on. But clearly today, a venture from the government, final confirmation, crossing the T's and dotting the I's on this, to not only provide that state investment through the taxpayer, but also to encourage, with that support, encourage the private sector to provide funding as well to what will be a pretty seismic piece of kit. It will provide 7% of the United Kingdom's electricity needs when it's concluded.
Well, hopefully not too seismic. We hope it stays safe. But looking at the other aspect of renewable energy, of course, onshore wind farms, indications that Rishi Sunak may be changing the wind on that a little as well.
Yes, there has been a growing rebellion amongst Conservative MPs in the last week or so on this issue. Of course, in her brief tenure as Prime Minister, Liz Truss not only wanted to legalise shale gas extraction, fracking, in the United Kingdom, but also onshore wind, in much the same mechanism with the same sort of community consent clause. Now, some of the people from the Liz Truss administration want to continue that, and indeed an amendment laid down by her Levelling Up Secretary Simon Clarke has attracted the backing of Liz Truss, of Boris Johnson and of the former COP President Alok Sharma. And I can reveal today that indeed they have surpassed the numbers for that amendment to overturn the government's majority. So the government is looking to talk with these rebels to see what sort of accommodation they can make. In my view, it seems likely that the government will come round to accepting this amendment in some form, to allowing some form of onshore wind power to go ahead with that crucial community consent mechanism.
The winds have changed. Tom at Downing Street, thanks very much indeed for that. More from you a little later, of course. But let's get an update now on all the news headlines with Rosie.
Good afternoon, it's 12:34. I'm Rosie Wright, keeping you up to date today on GB News. The number of people in England and Wales describing themselves as Christian has fallen below half of the population for the first time. The latest data from the ONS shows 46.2% of the population identified as Christian when the census was carried out last year. That compares to 59.3% a decade ago. While the number of people who say they have no religion has increased by 12% to just over 37. The government has given the go-ahead to build the Sizewell C nuclear power plant and has committed £700 million to the scheme. The plant, which is being developed by the French energy giant EDF, will be built in Suffolk. Ministers say the move will create 10,000 highly skilled jobs and provide reliable, low-carbon power to the equivalent of 6 million homes for more than 50 years. The Business Secretary, Grant Shapps, says the announcement means greater energy independence for the UK. A new section of the online safety bill has been removed following criticism by some Conservatives that it posed a risk to free speech. The amendment means big tech, like social media sites, will no longer be required to remove harmful material if it's deemed to be legal. The online safety bill is due to return to Parliament next week after repeatedly being delayed. The Culture Minister, Michelle Donnellan, told us the most important part of the bill is strengthening accountability and transparency. 18% of children aged 7 to 16 years old in England had a probable mental disorder this year, according to NHS Digital. Assessing metrics like young people's emotions, hyperactivity and concentration, the survey documented the increase in prevalence of mental disorders over the last 5 years. Children who lived in a household that couldn't afford food or used a food bank in the last year were more likely to be impacted. It is all to play for tonight in Qatar as England and Wales go head-to-head in the final match of Group B. Now, to get through to the knockouts, Wales must beat England and hope the USA draw with Iran. Well, let's find out more about preparations. GB News reporter Jack Carson joins us live from Wrexham. Jack, a very good afternoon. How is the town preparing for the game tonight?
Well, as you can see behind me, we're here on the main high street here in Wrexham. We've got World Cup bunting mixed with Christmas decorations. It really is the feel for a Winter World Cup here. As you can see behind me, the stage behind me being set up for the high street fan zone here. We're going to have some entertainment and then the game later. We've got huge Welsh flags in pub and bar windows all down this street. There's a few Welsh fans out on the street already, not drinking just yet, but soaking up a bit of the atmosphere, getting excited for the game tonight. It is the battle of the home nations, England versus Wales. You know, they're feeling optimistic about beating England. They want to beat England, but of course, as you mentioned, the USA-Iran game has to go their way in order for Wales to progress. So it's going to be a real game of luck tonight, but anything can happen on the pitch. It's a derby. You can't predict these things. Rob Page mentioning how England have got a lot at their disposal, but Wales have as well. Gareth Bale maybe hasn't shown the quality that he has yet at this World Cup, but that could all change tonight when England take on Wales.
And we'll keep you up to date with the game as it commences. Jack, thank you very much. You're up to date here on GB News. We're on your TV, online and DAB Plus radio. Now back to Mark.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Deebs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Monday to Thursday, 10 till 12, on TV, on radio and online.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
So, a few minutes ago, we were hearing how nuclear power could be the answer to part of the UK's energy security. Sizewell C getting the go-ahead, some £700 million. But in the North Sea, Britain's oil exploring companies warning the government's new energy profits levy, taxing them at 75%, will pose what they said is an existential threat to the UK's oil and gas industry. Well, I'm economics and business editor Liam Halligan joining us now with On the Money. And Liam, you've been talking to these, what they call upstream, the explorers, actually go out to try and find the oil and gas.
Yeah.
It's not the big companies, Shell and Esso and so on, but they do an awful lot of the real hard exploring out in the North Sea.
Yeah, I've been talking to an organisation called Brindex, and that's the Association of British Independent Oil Exploration Companies. These guys account for about 60 or 70% of the current output in the North Sea of oil and gas. These are the British companies who try and access the fields that are a bit harder, that the big oil majors you spoke about, like Shell and BP, don't really bother with. And unlike Shell and BP, the North Sea is their industry. The North Sea is what these companies exist for. So unlike the big guys, this stuff really matters to them. And I've been talking to a guy called Jacques Tomei, and I'll just tell you what Brindex, the organisation, actually said in a letter to the Chancellor of the Exchequer, Jeremy Hunt, over the weekend. If we can see the first, he said the latest rise to 75%, that's the oil energy levy, poses an existential threat to the industry, and with it, those jobs and our nation's energy security. UK upstream companies, as you say, the oil and gas producers and explorers, can no longer shoulder this extreme open-ended debt burden. And then Brindex went on to say in this letter to the Chancellor, if we continue down the path of the current anticipated 75% rate, further investment in the UK has become unviable, and so begins a rapid onset of the decline of the North Sea. It's worth saying, Mark, back at the start of this year, oil and gas companies were charged 40% on their profits. Now, that's a lot higher than regular corporation tax, which is currently 19%, about to go to 25%. So there was always, if you like, a kind of extra supplementary rate of corporation tax on the oil and gas companies. Rishi Sunak in May then put that up to 65%, and now we're going up to 75%. So, and this legislation is being put before the House of Commons tomorrow. So a lot of these small oil and gas explorers in the UK, in the North Sea, they're saying that this extra levy will wipe them out completely, their debtors will call in their loans, and then they'll have to go home.
Unsustainable. The public will be thinking, hold on, we keep hearing about all these companies making huge windfall profits and therefore that they're being taxed to get that back. But what these explorers would say, I guess, is that they're having to spend huge amounts to try and find the pockets of gas and oil that's left out there.
That's right. I spoke in an exclusive GB News interview to Jacques Tomei. He helps to run one of these independent British oil and gas companies called Tailwind. He's also speaking here on behalf of Brindex, this association of small oil and gas operators in the North Sea. And when I spoke to him earlier, Mark, this is what he said.
Really here today to talk about what is an HMT-inflicted complete collapse of the North Sea. There will be capital flight, and the timing of this is very poor given how strategic the North Sea is right now in the face of war with Russia and runaway inflations. This finance bill will increase energy costs to consumers. It will actually lower revenues over time for the HMT because they are on the hook for £20 billion of decommissioning, and that will accelerate as fields get decommissioned earlier.
There of Brindex, this association of oil and gas producers, smaller guys operating in the North Sea, he referred to HMT, that's Her Majesty's Treasury. He's saying that this will wipe them out, so then there'll be less revenue overall for the Treasury. That will mean that this windfall tax is actually counterproductive. And in fact, the industry would counter the idea it's a windfall tax. It's not a tax on their additional profits, it's a tax on their whole profits.
Right.
On their entire profits. And what they're saying in this next clip that Jack Tomei said to me in 1 second, what they're saying is they don't necessarily mind the 75%. They'll take that. They'll pay their way. They understand this is a very difficult position, but they want that 75% set mark over and above a certain oil price.
Right.
So it's genuinely a windfall tax and not a revenue tax. Here's the final clip from Jacques.
Capital will leave the country. And with that, a lot of jobs, infrastructure, and most importantly, energy security and bills will suffer. So what we're saying is create a very simple amendment with a price floor that will protect capital, protect jobs and energy security. And then above that level, we're happy to pay 75%. And the revenue will actually make more money over time because we will continue to reinvest and keep oil production up, which is what they need for their treasury budget.
We've been hearing from Westminster about the whole aspect of energy security. This, of course, is part of what Jacob Rees-Mogg and the others are saying. We should be encouraging domestic production, even the fracking for shale gas and so on. If this does go and they pull the plug, is that the end of North Sea exploration?
Well, it would certainly become a lot less viable based on the money that these companies have raised based on a tax regime which has changed many, many times over the last year, as I said. And the final point to make here, Mark, is, again, we're not talking about the big oil and gas companies who aren't really interested in the North Sea anymore, if we're honest. If the North Sea is going to play a part in our energy security, then we have to encourage these smaller British companies to get in there and extract these difficult pockets of oil and gas. And also, these companies provide a huge number of really well-paid jobs for semi-skilled and skilled engineers and oil workers.
Keep Aberdeen going, for instance, yeah?
Not just Aberdeen. For a lot of families around the country, somebody going away on an oil rig for a few months, making some proper money, that's a deposit on a house.
Yeah.
So this is a really, really important part, not just of our energy security, but our broader social mobility in the UK.
Liam, with that GB News exclusive, thank you very much indeed. More reaction, of course, to all those energy stories as they come through. But let's return to the football, or the Battle of Britain, as it's now being called in the World Cup. England taking on Wales in that final group game. One village on the border of England and Wales, torn, of course, over the allegiance of the home nations derby. Our reporter Jack Carson went to find out more.
Last time England and Wales came up against each other competitively, it was an injury-time goal from Daniel Sturridge that gave the Three Lions bragging rights. Now it's match day for the two sides in Qatar. The people watching the game in Clanymanek will have a different experience to most.
When England play Wales at a major tournament, it's always going to be a tight affair. But in this village, things can get a little bit too close for comfort, when right now I'm in England, but one step puts me in Wales.
The border of the two nations zigzags down the main road through the village, and the owner of this pub has Wales right outside his window. He says the World Cup has been a mixed experience.
It's been great. The atmosphere has been fantastic for the English games and for the Welsh games. It's been a little bit different, obviously being a Winter World Cup. We would normally have obviously the doors open, everyone outside and music playing. Plus obviously with the games being at 10 o'clock in the morning, 1 o'clock in the afternoon at the moment. Again, unless people are booking time off work, it's become very difficult. But if anything, what it's probably done is it made it a little bit more intimate, where everyone's inside. It's a little bit, we're shutting the doors, getting the heating on and making it nice and warm. And it's really helped to, obviously, with the atmosphere. And like I said, for the 4 games that we've had so far with the 2 English and the 2 Welsh, it's been fantastic.
Not everyone in this village is as keen to engage with Qatar 2022. The owner of the village shop on the Wales side says the controversy around the tournament has clouded his support for the home teams.
Where it's being held, the lack of women's rights, the slavery allegations, the homophobia, the lack of basic human rights in Qatar, really. So it's been a bit difficult sort of getting behind it, but we'll support the nations. I suppose we support England and Wales here, but, you know.
This is a close-knit community, and a home nations derby won't split this village into harsh rivals. But after their loss to Iran, it's going to be hard for Wales to reach the next stage.
Wales have to beat England and hope other results go their way for them to make the knockout stages. Otherwise, the sun could well be setting on their World Cup tournament. This one, though, nobody can predict because it all happens on the pitch. It's England versus Wales tonight, and anything could happen.
Jack Carson.
I wonder how many takes that took. However, lions and dragons across the high street there. Plenty more coming up live from Doha shortly, but let's tell you now about the government announcing changes to that online safety bill following criticism that it posed a risk to free speech. It means that the big tech companies will no longer be required to remove harmful material if it's deemed to be legal. But that's a move that campaigners have called a watering down of the bill. There'll also be measures to tackle what the Culture Secretary Michelle Donnellan said was the absurd situation surrounding age limits on social media. So the proposals will require tech firms to show how they enforce user age limits and publish risk assessments with potential harm to children. Let's get the views now of online safety campaigner Lauren Lafave, whose son Breck was murdered after being groomed online. Lauren, thank you very much indeed for joining us, and a very difficult issue, of course, for you and many other parents indeed. What do you make of the Culture Secretary's response, saying that a lot of these changes and the safeguards being removed are not in relation to children?
Well, I'm very thankful for Michelle Donnelly's help to try to highlight these issues. I think it's absolutely atrocious that the bill would have anything held up because something that's so common sense. Of course, we don't want harmful content online, things that glorify self-harming or suicide. So just because it hasn't been made illegal online because the online world is behind in keeping up with safety, it's unconscionable to think that we would allow our children or anyone, any vulnerable adult, why would anyone need to view harmful content such as self-harming and suicide? So we have to, as fast as we can, encourage government to make these very obvious things illegal that should be common sense. It's not a right of freedom of speech. It's about making people stay safe, children or not.
Yeah, and of course that's been the argument about the free speech element, that people may say, well, that what some people find harmful, others may not. But clearly, as you say, common sense about self-harming and suicide. So do you think there should be some code where these things are specifically entered and said this is proscribed?
Well, yeah, obviously there has to be measures put in place for things that could be harmful to anyone to not be viewable. There's no reason why we should have these things viewed. So I don't think freedom of speech should be the issue here. There's if anyone can stand up and tell me why we should have to view these sorts of things, I'd love to know, because none of us need to see anything so atrocious as self-harming and suicide. So I think we cannot let this hold up the bill. We cannot let this hold up the thousands and thousands of children that are being abused and viewing illegal content, dangerous content online. We need to do all we can to quickly protect our children.
So get it through and then maybe amend or update it later on if needs be.
Well, what I would like to see is if we could get this content made illegal at this point.
Right,
I don't want to waste this time that we have right now. Grasp, all of us who are working so hard together across any aspect of child protection want this to happen. So we don't want delays. We don't want it to be watered down. We want it to make common sense. I mean, I don't understand why this would be even something that we would have to argue about. It's absolutely ridiculous. So we need to make the platforms who allow this content on their sites accountable. They need to have to answer to the public, to the children who are being harmed, and have fines or punishments or be taken offline if they can't make their platform safe. And I don't understand, why anyone would want anything different. Why would anyone want any of us to be able to view things that are harmful to us, i.e. self-harming and suicide?
Indeed. Lauren, thank you very much indeed for joining us on GB News and bringing your view on this. And, of course, we'll see what emerges in the weeks ahead. Thank you very much indeed. Now, China's ambassador to the UK has been summoned to the Foreign Office amid a diplomatic row over the arrest and alleged beating up of a British journalist who was covering the COVID protests in Shanghai. That news following Prime Minister Rishi Sunak's first major foreign policy speech at the Lord Mayor's banquet last night. He told the audience that the golden era of UK-Chinese relations was over and that the UK had to evolve its approach to China. But the Prime Minister's speech drawing criticism for being too conciliatory. Well, joining us now, Con Coughlin, Defence Editor and Chief Foreign Affairs Columnist at the Daily Telegraph. Con, thanks for joining us once more. First of all, some response to what the Prime Minister said last night. Ian Duncan-Smith saying that it was almost appeasement, which some may think is going a bit too far maybe in criticising him.
Well, hi, Mark. Good to be with you. Yes, appeasement is a very strong word, but I think Ian Duncan-Smith has a point. I think the whole problem with the British government's approach to China is we still want to try and maintain cordial ties with Beijing, as the Americans do, and we've seen from what's going on in China over the last few days that this is a brutal authoritarian regime, and nobody's even mentioned what they're doing to the Uyghurs. And we should really be keeping our distance from Beijing and not trying to think that somehow we could do a deal. And so I think, the Prime Minister last night was trying to have his cake and eat it, as his predecessor liked to do. But I think, we've really got to man up when it comes to China and tell them precisely what we think of their treatment of their own people as well as BBC journalists.
It all failed, though, over Hong Kong, didn't it?
Yeah. Well, I think because we did so little over Hong Kong, President Xi just thinks he can get away with it, that the world is not going to do anything. He'll have seen the fractures in the Western alliance over Ukraine. Okay, the West will come together, not together Ukraine, but, still sitting in Beijing and looking at the way the world's operating at the moment, you think, well, I can do what I like. And of course, what President Xi wants to do, now he's been sworn in as president for life, is occupy Taiwan. So, these are very dangerous times. And, I do think the Prime Minister needs to be a lot more robust in the way he approaches the whole China problem.
Yeah, and the protests, of course, continuing and growing in China itself. We'll have to leave it there. We're getting a bit of interference on the signal, but thank you very much for bringing us your view once more.
Okay.
Yeah, and we'll speak again because clearly those protests will be continuing in the weeks ahead. Thank you very much indeed. But let's now tell you about the law enforcement agencies across several countries smashing one of Europe's biggest drugs rings, responsible, they say, for controlling more than a third of the cocaine trade across the continent. Well, one British man suspected of being the ringleader was among 49 arrested in this operation, dismantling what the authorities described as a super cartel. The crime group's activities funded lavish lifestyles and luxury homes across 6 countries. As well as huge amounts of cash, police seized 30 tonnes of cocaine, luxury cars and other high-end goods worth many millions of pounds. Our Home and Security editor Mark White has more.
Across multiple countries, coordinated raids to smash one of Europe's biggest drugs rings. In Spain, France, Belgium, the Netherlands and the United Arab Emirates, 49 people were detained. They're all suspected of being members of a super cartel, believed responsible for supplying more than a third of Europe's illicit trade in cocaine. Among those arrested, a British man in Dubai, suspected of leading the crime group. He'd fled to the UAE from Spain, where he was also wanted for kidnap. €500,000 were recovered across a number of properties. And at multiple locations, law enforcement uncovered the evidence of lavish lifestyles. Luxury living, which authorities say was funded by criminality. High-end homes where the suspects lived and controlled the trade in drugs and money laundering. garages stuffed full with expensive motorbikes, and elsewhere luxury sports cars. There was, we're told, nothing discreet about the lives these suspects were living. The organised crime group is suspected of shipping cocaine from South America into Europe for distribution throughout the continent. The UK's National Crime Agency says the shipping routes across the Atlantic are constantly exploited by the criminal gangs.
The majority of the production is in South America, Colombia, Peru, and the routing from there en masse comes mainly through container ship, direct towards Europe, often into the ports of either Antwerp or Rotterdam, and then on land overwards towards the UK, or staying on the container and coming into ports at the UK south.
During more than 10 days of operational activity to dismantle this organised crime group, authorities say they seized more than 30 tonnes of cocaine. There's no doubt these raids are a major blow to the cartels flooding Europe with Class A drugs. But this is a highly lucrative trade that clearly funded luxurious lifestyles in multiple countries. Authorities are more than aware that other organised crime groups will soon attempt to exploit the gap in the market created by the dismantling of this super cartel. Mark White, GB News.
Mark with that story on the smashing of a super drugs cartel. We'll be speaking to him live here in the studio in this next hour to get more details on that. Also live to Qatar ahead of that big game tonight, the Battle of Britain as it's called, and we'll be finding out what you're doing as you prepare for that big game at 7 p.m. tonight. Before that though, let's take a short break and news headlines coming up too.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here. You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
I think I've seen probably quite enough of Matt Hancock to last me a lifetime.
I'll also be getting to know you better, travelling to find out what you think about the politicians who are fighting for your vote.
They've got to get this country back on track.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. only on GB News, on TV, radio and online.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing!
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
A very good afternoon to you. 3 minutes past 1. I'm Rosie Wright, keeping you up to date. The number of people in England and Wales describing themselves as Christian has fallen below half of the population for the first time. The latest data from the ONS shows 46.2% of us identified as Christian when the census was last carried out. We can compare that to over a year ago when it was 59%. The number of people who say they have no religion has increased by 12%. The government's given the go-ahead to build the Sizewell C nuclear power plant and committed £700 million to the scheme. The plant, which is being developed by the French energy giant EDF, will be built in Suffolk. Ministers say the move will create 10,000 highly skilled jobs and provide reliable, low-carbon power to the equivalent of 6 million homes for more than 50 years. The Business Secretary, Grant Shapps, says the announcement means greater energy independence for the UK.
It's a combination between taxpayers' money but also private investment, and that's, as you rightly say, is the next stage. But it's a sign of, if you like, the confidence that the British government has in nuclear as part of our energy mix. And a very, very important point, which has been driven home so clearly by Putin's illegal invasion of Ukraine, all that's done to energy prices, that we must have a mix of energy in this country.
China's ambassador to the UK has been summoned to the Foreign Office over a diplomatic row following the arrest and alleged beating of a BBC journalist covering COVID protests. A heavy police presence has been reported in several cities in China to deter future protests after unrest over the weekend. In the last half an hour, the Foreign Office Minister has been answering an urgent question on the matter. He says the UK government's demanding a full and thorough explanation.
As the Foreign Secretary made clear yesterday, the arrest of BBC journalists while covering the recent protests in Shanghai is a deeply disturbing and wholly unacceptable situation. The journalists must be able to do their job without fear of arrest or intimidation. The BBC have stated that the journalist was beaten and kicked by the police during his arrest and was held for several hours before being released. In response, we're calling in the Chinese ambassador to make clear the unacceptable and unwarranted nature of these actions, the importance of freedom of speech, and to demand a full and thorough explanation. More broadly, we recognise that China poses a systemic challenge to our values and interests, as highlighted again by the Prime Minister yesterday, a challenge that grows more acute as it moves towards greater authoritarianism. That's why we're taking robust action to protect our interests, to stand up for our values. That includes imposing sanctions, leading action at the UN, and strengthening our supply chain resilience. Let me assure members that as part of our frank relationship with China, we will continue to raise our human rights concerns at the highest levels.
A section of the new online safety bill has been removed following criticism by some Conservatives that it posed a risk to free speech. The amendment means big tech like social media sites will no longer be required to remove harmful material if it's deemed to be legal. The online safety bill is due to return to Parliament next week after repeatedly being delayed. The Shadow Work and Pension Secretary says Labour's concerned the change is a major watering down of the legislation.
Well, there is concern about the fact that they appear to be weakening that bill, but we certainly do need a form of online safety bill to protect people. We've seen people be driven into the most tragic of circumstances because of content that they've been able to find online. And I'm a parent, I've got two girls, an 11-year-old and a 9-year-old. I mean, it actually terrifies me to think that they might be able to find horrible material, particularly at stages in their life when they are vulnerable, because we all know adolescence is a vulnerable time.
3 refugees have been rescued in Spain after they were discovered clinging to the rudder of an oil tanker. The stowaways were spotted as the vessel anchored in the port of Las Palmas in Gran Canaria. The ship had sailed from Nigeria. It's believed the migrants had survived 11 days at sea. Spain's Maritime Safety and Rescue Society say they've been transferred to a port where they're receiving medical attention for mild dehydration. It is all to play for tonight in Qatar as England and Wales go head-to-head in the final match of Group B. To get through to the knockouts, Wales must beat England and hope the USA draw with Iran. Well, meanwhile, Gareth Southgate's side are looking to bounce back from their draw with the US and qualify as top of the group. You're up to date on GB News. We'll bring you more as it develops. Now back to Mark.
Rosie, thank you very much indeed. So get ready for the new Battle of Britain in the desert of Doha. Wales and England facing off in that do-or-die match at the Ahmed bin Ali Stadium. Now, anything less than a win for Wales means they're out. England have to regain their fans' pride after a lacklustre performance against the USA. So all to play for. We've got the very latest for you live here from Doha. That's the scene there at the moment with the skyline. Also from Manchester and from Wrexham in Wales. And we're speaking to a former professional player to get his view ahead of that game. In the other headlines, the Prime Minister setting out his approach to China in a major foreign policy speech declaring the golden era of relations is over, but some, including Ian Duncan-Smith, saying it's not enough and that they've spoken of appeasement. We'll be hearing from Mr. Ian Duncan-Smith and what he's had to say in the Commons in the last few minutes. Do no harm. Social media sites no longer having to take down material designated legal but harmful as part of the government's proposed plans for online safety. The Culture Secretary, Michelle Donnellan, rejecting claims it could make safeguards for children weaker. We'll get the view of an online safety expert. But first, never in the field of football has so much been expected by so many of so few. Yes, at 7 this evening, Wales and England meeting in Doha for the final Group B game. Iran and USA, the other teams in that group, in action at the same time, providing all sorts of permutations. This is the current Group B table. England sitting top, Iran in second on 3 points, USA on 2 and Wales down the bottom on 1 point. But all 4 teams could still qualify. So a brief look at the various scenarios showing that all 4 teams could still qualify for the knockout stages, Wales needing to beat England by at least 1 goal difference and hoping that Iran and USA play out a draw against each other. Wales would go through due to superior goal difference. Iran could be through for the first time ever if they beat the USA, but a draw would also be enough if Wales lose to England. USA, well, they have to win against Iran to survive. All clear? No, me neither. But here's a man who does know what's going on. Let's get the latest with Paul Hawkins, our man in Doha. And you're still in the bar just by chance. Of course, vital preparations for tonight's games, because that's where all the Wales fans are, with well, a substantial stash of booze to maybe celebrate or commiserate.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we're at one of the pre-match build-up Wales fans parties. They've basically taken over the whole first floor of the Intercontinental Hotel here in Doha, and we're here with some of the fans now. Look, they're just supping on some pints here. By the way, they're only in denominations of 5 and 10, so you can only buy packages of 5 or 10, or I think 6 and 12. So simply having 1 beer is no good, and then they sell them in packages of sort of £80 for 5 pints and a curry. Let's chat to some of the people who are here and find out how they're feeling. How are you feeling about it, sir? How are you feeling about the game?
Well, I'm nervous. I'm really nervous.
Yeah.
Yes. I want Wales to win. I want the USA and Iran to have a draw, but
I saw you doing some good dance moves before.
Yeah, I can dance.
You threw a few. Just give us one quick one, a very quick one. Here we go. This guy was doing some serious moves. Look at that. There you go. Look at that. There you go. It's like the Welsh David Brent. Let's have a chat with Yvonne as well. Thank you for that. Yvonne, how are you feeling? And not about that. Well, actually, about that dancing.
Well, he is 60, so I suppose we can't expect anything.
Is he really? Is he good? Is it good? How are you feeling about the drinking here in Doha? You've got to be quite strategic, haven't you? Because you can't just have one.
Well, 5 tokens, so you share. I have 2 tokens. My husband has 3, so he has more pints than me. But I don't worry. Don't worry.
So that's okay. That's okay. Yeah. How are you feeling about the game, guys?
Oh, I've got pilly palace butterflies in my tummy at the moment.
Yeah. Feeling confident?
Yes.
Yeah. You're not feeling quite as confident.
Quite as confident, but you never know. As the pints are going down, we get more confident.
We know what Iceland did to them in the Euros, so we can do it. Iceland are smaller than us. We can do it.
Yeah, you can do it. Yeah.
And we're going to be happy whatever happens. As long as they give 100% on that field, we're going to love it.
And like I said to you, at the end of the match, whatever the score, there'll be applause for all the players because we know they'll have done the best.
Yeah, brilliant.
Stronger.
Yeah.
Exactly. I'm Ohid, yeah?
Yeah.
Exactly. Great, thank you guys. Thank you for speaking to us. The guy who organised this kind of fan party is called Rodri Williams. He's been telling us about the preparations that have gone into it.
Six Nations rugby, big occasion. Home Nations football match, massive occasion.
this is the World Cup. This might never happen ever again. So that's how special it is for everybody, for Welsh fans, for English fans, that we're here facing each other. And what makes it even more incredible is that it's all up for grabs. 4 teams are going for those 2 places tonight. Yes, some are in the driving seat. We've only got 1 point. England have got 3. Iran have got 3. But that's how tight it is. And when you're Welsh, you only need a glimmer of hope to grab onto something. And look, that's why we love sport. That's why we love the FIFA World Cup.
Yeah, so that's Rodri Williams, who's organised these parties. Let's hear now from the manager, Rob Page, who's hoping to invoke some of that Saudi/Japan/Ghana underdog spirit that's been so prevalent in this World Cup.
This tournament has shown that every team is beatable. I really do. So, of course, England are beatable. They've got a wonderful pool of players to choose from, I might add. So, whatever team he puts on that pitch is going to be a tough challenge for us. And, of course, they're going to be favourites to win the games.
Yeah, so Wales very much the underdogs. You've done the maths on that, Mark. You explained it so well, but Gareth Southgate, the England manager, very aware that his side have to bounce back from that awful performance against the USA, and he knows that given this is a British derby, Wales are going to be right up for it.
It's like any 2 countries whose borders are next to each other. There's a competitive rivalry. For me, it's a great sporting rivalry. We've got to focus on performance. We've got to play well. You know, we've got to bring our quality to the table and give that the best opportunity we have of making the difference on the pitch.
Well, Paul, before you queue up for your 10 pints and packet of crisps, I have been going through these stats a little bit. The last time that Wales won was in 1984 under Mark Hughes, 1-0 against England. And the last time they met was a friendly October 2020. England won 3-0. I have to ask you, what's the prediction there in the bar, the Intercontinental at the moment?
Oh, well, don't take it from me. Let's go back to our friends who are sitting around the table, see if we can get a vaguely sober score prediction, Mark. Very quickly. Guys, can I get a quick score prediction from you, sir? Quick score prediction.
Well, my head says 2-0 England, but my heart says 2-0 Wales.
Oh, very good, very good. Anyone else? Yvonne, what's your score prediction, love?
Oh, score! I don't do score predictions. I'd like to win.
Yeah, but you're not going to go for a score prediction for us? No? 2-1. And you, sirs? Score prediction?
Just give them some sugar, boys!
I like that. Can we get a quick rendition of Amara Heed? Can we get a quick rendition of Amara Heed?
Get us a big singer here. Come here, Al. We need the singers.
Go on then, quickly. Well done, there you go. You don't get this in the soup. It's still good in the soup, but it's not quite like this.
Paul and the Doha Male Voice Choir, thank you very much indeed for that. We'll see how they are as the afternoon progresses. I fear that it may be a little bit more vocal later. We shall see. For the moment, thank you very much indeed. Great stuff. Well, let's head from Doha to Wrexham. Let's speak to our reporter, Jack Carson there. Jack, I don't know if you were able to hear the singing in Doha. I gather it's a little quieter at the moment in Wrexham.
Yeah, unfortunately, I can't offer you a choir here in Wrexham. But as you can see behind me, we've got some fantastic bunting and Christmas lights. It's the real kind of mix of the World Cup and Christmas here down Wrexham High Street. As we move across, you can see some huge Welsh flags in the pub, and this is the High Street that the World Cup fan zone, one of the World Cup fan zones here in Wrexham is. There's going to be up to 2,000 fans possibly here later on to watch England-Wales, that Battle of Britain, as you were talking about. Now, just quickly, you'll be happy to know, Mark, that I've hung up my football boots after being in Clannimannock yesterday and that awful strike into goal. But I am now joined by Councillor Nigel Williams, who is the lead member for City Centre and events here in Wrexham. You've helped put this event on. There's not many free fan zones around the country. What was the thinking behind putting this on?
Obviously, Wrexham football is a huge part of us to the city. I'm not sure if you're aware, but the building behind us, the Wednesday Hotel, the FAW was formed there in 1876. So really, I think Wrexham's the spiritual home of Wrexham of football. So we had to put this event on here. There are 2 events on tonight. There's one on the High Street here, which is capacity up to 2,500, and there's an indoor event in T Pawb with a capacity of 500 for that's a family zone with 3 screens in there too.
And tell me a bit about what's gone into putting this event on. We can see some staging and barriers. What can people expect tonight?
Well, tonight, as you can see behind us now, there's the stage just gone up. From 5 o'clock, there's live entertainment with live bands 5 till 7, as in T Pawb as well. And then we have a huge screen which will come in front of the stage to show the match, and then live bands again afterwards to hopefully celebrate and cheer.
And your score prediction?
I'm not going to be greedy. I think I'll go 5-1 to Wales.
Oh, no, okay, nice and conservative here in Wrexham, but it is a fantastic atmosphere. It will be a fantastic atmosphere later on. There's obviously some Wales fans on the street already, and we're getting ready for this big battle. As an Englishman in Wales, I'm not going to give you a score prediction for my own safety, but later on it will be a bit busier, and maybe we might get a choir later as well, Mark. Yeah. But right now in Wrexham, preparations underway for that big game later on.
Jack, I can tell you if it is 5-1, it will be a great atmosphere, that's for certain, but we shall see a little later. Thank you very much indeed as the preparations continue there. But let's get the views now of former Portsmouth, Newcastle and Coventry striker Mickey Quinn. The mighty Quinn, as he used to echo around Fratton Park, I remember many years ago. Thanks very much for joining us. We won't get the teams till 6, Mickey, but already questions about what both managers do about a certain Gareth Bale and Harry Kane. I mean, are they the real questions to be answered first?
Definitely. I think you've got to say, and I'm going to disappoint a few Welsh fans here, that Gareth Bale hasn't really been at it, Mark, the last 2 games. He got the important penalty for the equaliser against, the first game against USA. But second game, never really in it. Aaron Ramsey, never really in it for Wales. And then you put that on the flip side for Harry Kane, he just looks leggy to me, He's looked like it's the end of a long season in the Premier League, and it's the World Cup. He's had that knock on his ankle as well, Mark, which probably hasn't helped his case. But, we want to see a fit Harry Kane leading the line as captain and getting goals like he does for Spurs. And it's just he's just looked a shadow of himself the first 2 games.
Yeah, I mean, suggestions that he, as you say, he's got this problem with his ankle where it starts swelling after 15 minutes on what are quite hard pitches. But, I mean, you've touched on an interesting point, and that is that this is in the middle of a Premier League season, that a lot of these footballers have been maybe carrying a few knocks, but also trying to cope then with the heat out there in Qatar. It's a really big ask.
It is a big ask for them. It's happened that quickly, Mark, as well, hasn't it? Because I think, was it 1 week after the Premier League fixtures, they joined up with their international countries. Then you're adapting to the training facilities, the heat out there. And look, I'm not making excuses because they play, the majority of the England team played really well the first game against Iran, but looked very leggy. I thought they were very poor, to tell you the truth, Mark. The second game.
Yeah, there was
no spat.
Yeah, the same being said of Wales, who are pretty dire as well. I mean, one hopes that perhaps we get a bit of football and it's not one of these attritional games where, a goal is snatched at the last minute.
Yeah, look, I think it will. I think if England get an early goal, I think the game will open up. But I think Wales will play a little bit cagey, as we've seen first couple of games. Look, Wales have, to me, they've got some good players, but they punched well above their weight. England are hot favourites. If England, you know, and this is with me with Gareth, he's always very defensive minded first. You know, Foden should have come on instead of Henderson the last game. I think Phil Foden should start tonight, and that'll open up a lot going forward. You know, especially to maybe supply Harry Kane with the service he needs. So for me, if he plays an attacking team, Gareth Southgate, I'm fingers crossed. I think it'll only be one result. I'm sorry, the Welsh fans, especially in Doha, because they've got to nurse them 3 pints for the next 5 hours.
I think
it's going to be an England win, Mark.
I think there's a few more. Apparently, they can only order in 5 or 10 pint loads. So I think by 7 o'clock tonight, there may be the scoreline won't matter that much. But we are asking everyone for their prediction. What's your scoreline?
I think an early goal for England. Let's say Harry Kane. And it's going to be a 3-0 victory to England.
3-0, all right, OK. We're jotting all these down and we shall return to them and see who's got the right one. But Mickey, as ever, thank you very much for joining us with
Good to see you, Mark.
Yeah, cheers. Thank you very much. Well, latest coming up from Doha, of course, throughout the afternoon. Also coming up, North Sea. Well, that's, the vision there at Doha, with the clouds just starting to gather, so it might cool down a little. And Paul Hawkins was telling us it's not as hot as it has been in recent days, so hopefully that'll help the players. But also coming up, GB News exclusive, the North Sea oil company Bindex calling on the Chancellor to rethink the high tax with concerns of a major threat now to our oil and gas industry. That coming up after the break.
I'm Mark Dolan. Join me at 11 on GB News for Headliners, in which I'll be joined by 2 of the UK's top comedians discussing tomorrow's papers. If it's an important story, we'll cover it, but we'll have some fun along the way. Headliners, the late-night paper review that won't send you to sleep like the others will. 7 nights a week at 11 p.m. on GB News.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of 2 wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr. Me and my panel will get stuck right into the day's events, and I can tell you, in fact, I can warn you, expect some robust debates, some strong opinions and perspectives from both sides of the fence. It's about you at home as well. I love to read out all of your comments, or at least as many as I can. So join me, Michelle Dewberry, Monday to Friday, 6 till 7 on Jubes and Kerr.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
And welcome back. So our GB News exclusive, we can tell you that the Association of British Independent Oil Exploration Companies, Bindex for short, has written to the Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, warning of threats to the industry, which could lead to, quote, the rapid onset of the decline of the North Sea. This all follows the government's new energy profits levy at some 75%. Let's get more with our economics and business editor, Liam Halligan, with On the Money. And Liam, this follows the various sort of tax rates which seem to be going up and up and up. Part of the windfall tax package, but specifically now on the explorers out in the North Sea.
We learnt about this in the autumn statement with Chancellor Jeremy Hunt, Mark. And for a long time, oil and gas companies exploring in the North Sea, extracting oil and gas, have paid much higher profits tax than other companies. They pay profits tax at 40% rather than the corporation tax, which is currently 19%. Back in May, Rishi Sunak, when he was Chancellor, remember that? He increased that to 65% from 40%, and then Jeremy Hunt in the autumn statement just a couple of weeks ago raised that to 75%. You rightly mentioned there that Brindex, that's the Association of British Independent Oil Exploration Companies, they've written to the Chancellor. Now, these aren't the big oil majors like Shell and BP. These are the smaller British companies that work the North Sea for oil and gas. And they, in fact, account for about 60 or 70% of the gas and oil that's extracted from the North Sea. So they're hugely important. They go for the smaller wells that are more difficult. And for them, their whole business is the North Sea. So this energy profits levy, which is coming to the House of Commons tomorrow for its second reading, is absolutely key. And so they've written to the Chancellor. This is what they've said. They've said, Mark, that this latest rise to 75% poses an existential threat to the industry, and with it, those jobs and our nation's energy security. UK upstream companies, they're the oil producers and explorers, can no longer shoulder this extreme open-ended tax burden, in their words. And then they say, Mark, if we continue down the path of the current anticipated 75% rate, further investment in the UK has become unviable, and so begins a rapid onset of the decline of the North Sea. So GB News got in touch with somebody who runs one of the companies in Brindex, a guy called Jacques Thomé. He set up and runs an oil explorer called Tailwind. He's speaking here on behalf of Brindex, and this is what he said.
Really here today to talk about what is an HMT-inflicted complete collapse of the North Sea. There will be capital flight, and the timing of this is very poor given how strategic the North Sea is right now in the face of war with Russia and runaway inflations. This finance bill will increase energy costs to consumers. It will actually lower revenues over time for the HMT because they are on the hook for £20 billion of decommissioning, and that will accelerate as fields get decommissioned earlier.
They're talking about HMT, that's industry slang for Her Majesty's Treasury. What they're saying is the 75% profits levy will close down a lot of these small companies. They're saying that once they're closed down, the Treasury, rightly, the Exchequer, the state, then has to pay for the decommissioning costs of those wells. So they'll lose a huge amount of money rather than actually raising money. But Brindex say they're not against the 75% levy per se, however high it is. They say we want to pay our way, we want to show that this is a particularly difficult moment for the UK. But they don't think that 75% should apply right from zero all the way up. So they're saying it should apply above a certain level of the oil price. Again, this is Jacques Thomé.
Capital will leave the country. And with that, a lot of jobs, infrastructure, and most importantly, energy security and bills will suffer. So what we're saying is create a very simple amendment with a price floor that will protect capital, protect jobs and energy security. And then above that level, we're happy to pay 75%. And the revenue will actually make more money over time because we will continue to reinvest and keep oil production up, which is what they need for their treasury budget.
So it all ties in with this word windfall, because we know about the political battle between the government and Labour on the windfall profits. Great pressure on the government to try and get some money back. But what they're saying is that this has gone too far, because clearly they need to spend money to find these pockets of oil and gas for energy security for Britain.
And they're saying if you're putting a 75% tax on their entire profit, whatever the oil price, that isn't a windfall tax, that's a revenue tax that would then be 3 times the new rate of corporation tax for other companies, which is coming in at 25%, up from 19% as a result of this autumn statement. And that's why these companies, whose entire livelihood is in the North Sea, they're not like Shell and BP. For them, the North Sea is a rounding error in their global operations. They're saying that they should be taxed at 75%, if that is to be the number, above a certain level of the oil price, so maybe about $75. And what's also worth saying, Mark, is that these British companies in the North Sea, they provide lots and lots of really good jobs for skilled and semi-skilled engineers, rig workers. A lot of people know this is a way that ordinary families can actually get some cash. If someone goes away to sea for 2 or 3 months, it's difficult, the family makes sacrifices, but they can get money together to put the deposit on a home, take their family forward. So for many people across the UK, if these small oil and gas explorers in the UK do go under, it's not just bad for energy security, it's also bad for their personal livelihoods.
And not just Aberdeen, as you say, across the country.
Yeah.
Liam, with that exclusive, thank you very much indeed. And we'll see, of course, what happens as that bill goes through Parliament tomorrow. More, too, on energy security with a nuclear option. But talking of political explosions, Rishi Sunak and the whole issue of China, is he an appeaser? That's certainly what Ian Duncan-Smith has said. We're getting that in a moment. First, news headlines coming up with Rosie.
A very good afternoon. 1:33. I'm Rosie Wright, keeping you up to date. The number of people in England and Wales describing themselves as Christian has fallen below half of the population for the first time. The latest data from the ONS shows 46.2% identified as Christian when the census was last carried out, compared to over 59% a decade ago. The number of people who say they have no religion has increased by 12 percentage points. The government's given the go-ahead to build the Sizewell C nuclear power plant and committed £700 million to the scheme. The plant's being developed by the French energy giant EDF. It's going to be built in Suffolk. Ministers say the move will create 10,000 highly skilled jobs and provide relative low-carbon power to the equivalent of 6 million homes for more than 50 years. The Business Secretary, Grant Shapps, says the announcement means greater energy independence for the UK. China's ambassador to the UK has been summoned to the Foreign Office over a diplomatic row following the arrest and alleged beating of a BBC journalist covering COVID protests. A heavy police presence has been reported in several cities in China to deter further protests after unrest over the weekend. In the last few hours, the Foreign Office Minister has been answering an urgent question on the matter. He says the UK government's demanding a full and thorough explanation over the arrest of Ed Lawrence. A section of the new online safety bill has been removed following criticism by some Conservatives that it posed a risk to free speech. The amendment means that big tech, like social media sites, will no longer be required to remove harmful material if it's deemed to be legal. The online safety bill is due to return to Parliament next week after repeatedly being delayed. 3 refugees have been rescued in Spain after they were discovered clinging to the rudder of an oil tanker. The stowaways were spotted as the vessel anchored in the port of Las Palmas in Gran Canaria. The ship had sailed from Nigeria. It's believed the migrants had survived 11 days at sea. Spain's Maritime Safety and Rescue Society say the individuals have been transferred to the port where they're receiving medical attention for mild dehydration. We're on your TV, online and DAB+ radio. It's GB News.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Friday and Sunday night from 9, it's Mark Dolan Tonight.
We're on the same page again. There's something weird happening.
Let Ian finish. Don't be such a cranky.
That mini budget was the tip of the iceberg.
And on Saturday, my show just got bigger. From 8, it's Mark Dolan's Saturday Night In.
You can't govern a country if you can't speak. Stop talking.
My God, we reached the end. I've never been early in my life. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, We're
on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and TuneIn apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
And it's about standards and public life. No, I'll tell you what's hypocrisy, Narendra.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin.
We believe in the UK.
No bias, no censorship.
It just doesn't make sense to me. He wasn't doing his job as Chancellor.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News.
And welcome back to GB News Live. Plenty more coming up, of course, from Qatar with the build-up to the World Cup. But let's now reflect on the politics of the day, with the government dropping plans to ban legal but harmful web content under their online safety bill. Well, campaigners have criticised the move as a watering down of legislation. But Downing Street insists it's the right balance to protect free speech. Culture Secretary Michelle Donlan also announcing measures to tackle what she said was the absurd situation surrounding age limits on social media. The proposals will require tech firms to show how they enforce user age limits and publish risk assessments with any potential harm to children. Let's get the views now of Imran Khan, the CEO of the Centre for Countering Digital Hate. Thanks very much indeed for joining us. Already a reaction coming in from groups like the Samaritans, who call this a hugely backward step.
Well, look, there are a lot of criticisms of this bill today, and part of it is actually of the government's own making, because the changes they've made today are actually smaller than everyone realised. The truth is that the list of things that platforms had to deal with, there was two lists. The first was their list of community standards that they have, that the platforms publish, that everyone's meant to abide by. And the government's law, the online safety bill, said, OK, you've got that list, now enforce them. And then there was a second list of things that were deemed legal but harmful, so like critical standards, for example, on extreme race hate, on self-harm and suicide content. And the government said, we will have an additional list that will set essentially de minimis, minimum standards that must be implemented. Now, the truth is those are already covered for the main part by the platform's own community standards. And if you told me 6 years ago when I started CCDH, seeing the rise of anti-Semitism on the left in the UK, seeing the rise of conspiracism and hatred on the right, and also during the pandemic with the spread of deadly disinformation, that there would be a bill that forced platforms to actually stop being hypocrites and enforce their own rules, I'd have bitten your hand off. And I think that where we are today, we're still getting that bill. It's just that the government has to have had, it's gone through a self-inflicted palaver this summer where they've essentially argued the bill is woke on one hand, or on the other hand, the bill will solve all your problems. It was never either. And what we've got now, I think, is a very solid bit of legislation that we can build on.
Is legislation the right way to actually tackle this, given that the nature of the very beast changes? Is it actually better to have something more flexible that you can use as and when in terms of weaponising it, if you like?
I completely understand where you're coming from, but this is actually a relatively flexible framework. So let me explain why we have a problem. The problem is that platforms at the moment have rules, but as companies, there are no consequences to them not enforcing the rules. And because you can't move platform, as we're all seeing with Twitter, it's very difficult to move your relationships from one platform to another. And if they do enforce their rules, they reduce the amount of content. And content for them is the key thing that they monetize, that they make money from, because they just put ads next to that content. What this does is changes the calculus. It changes the relationship between those two things. So if they don't enforce their rules, the government can impose fines of up to 10% of their global revenues. Now, that's a substantial disincentive to sitting on their backsides and not doing their jobs properly. And what it will do is create a crucial incentive. And that's a permanent thing. It changes the business model at a more fundamental level. So that will affect TikTok, the metaverse, just as much as it will legacy services like Twitter and Facebook.
OK. So just very quickly, last thought, for all those parents concerned about their teenagers, particularly all these issues about self-harm and suicide, should they feel safer or should they actually be more alert as a result of these changes?
Well, the bill isn't here yet, and we haven't seen how the regulations are going to be enforced by Ofcom. Our next report coming out in a few weeks' time is actually on self-harm content on one of the major platforms. And I'd urge parents, be aware that the platforms you're currently letting your kids use, letting them be, babysat by Mark Zuckerberg, is an incredibly irresponsible thing to do at this time.
OK, Imran, for the moment, thank you. But I think we'll probably be speaking to you again in the weeks ahead on that particular topic. For the moment, thanks very much indeed. Now, we've been talking about the oil explorers and, of course, all the problems in terms of getting energy security and the announcement about a new nuclear plant. And Sizewell C has got the thumbs up, a £700 million development to create our energy security. Well, let's get the views now of energy expert Angela Knight, previously Chief Executive of Energy UK, the trade association. Angela, thanks very much for joining us. This was sort of long mooted. It looks as if it's got the green light now. How soon, however, before we see the energy coming through from that particular plant, do you think?
Well, it's a big plant, and you said 700 million. 700 million is not the price of the plant. I wish it was. It's going to be a very significant number of billions. That's just the piece that the, as I read it, has pledged in order to get things underway. With a big plant such as this, you're looking somewhere between 10, 12, maybe 15 years. The actual timescale depends on, well, getting the money, getting all the planning in place, as well as getting that building, the building underway. So they do take time, these big plants, and this is an investment now for the future to help us with energy security. Right. So as well as this, and I'm supportive of it, there is quite a strong view behind getting Sizewell underway, and whilst of course there'll be some objectors, the broad-based view is in favour. So the government also needs to look at the short and medium term as well. So here's a tick in the box, but there are other things that need to be done to support this.
Yeah, you mentioned the future. I mean, I was going to put to you the fact that, is this actually the past, that it's already perhaps out of date in a way, looking at what's happened to the French nuclear industry. And, of course, EDF is directly involved in Sizewell. They had all these problems over maintenance and repairs and so on, which has meant that the energy they give us over the interconnector, yesterday, for instance, suggestions we may have to put some kind of measures in place to get everyone to turn their electric devices off because the French weren't supplying enough energy. I think we've lost Angela. I hope that wasn't EDF throwing the switch after I mentioned it. However, not enough electricity, it seems, to power that particular connection to Angela. So apologies for that. We'll try and get back to it a little later. But just to underline, the government giving the green light, 700 million initial cost, of course, for Sizewell C, 10,000 jobs and low carbon power, they say, for 6 million homes for the next 50 years. MPs have been calling for tougher action to protect British citizens and human rights campaigners after the arrest and alleged beating up of a journalist covering COVID protests in Shanghai. Well, the Foreign Office Minister David Rutley told the Commons that China posed a systemic challenge to our values and interests.
As the Foreign Secretary made clear yesterday, the arrest of BBC journalists while covering the recent protests in Shanghai is a deeply disturbing and wholly unacceptable situation. The journalists must be able to do their job without fear of arrest or intimidation. The BBC have stated that the journalist was beaten and kicked by the police during his arrest and was held for several hours before being released. In response, we're calling in the Chinese ambassador to make clear the unacceptable and unwarranted nature of these actions.
Well, at the Lord Mayor's banquet last night, Prime Minister Rishi Sunak saying the golden era of UK-Chinese relations over and that the UK had to evolve its approach to China. But his speech has been attracting criticism. Tory MP and former party leader, of course, Ian Duncan-Smith, likening some of those remarks on China as close to appeasement. Well, joining us now is our political reporter, Olivia Utley. And Olivia, just in terms of what Ian Duncan-Smith has been saying, he's also reacted to those comments in the Commons there by David Rutley, picking up on that phrase, systemic challenge, when he says it should really be treated as a systemic threat.
Yes, and he says that calling China a competitor is a euphemism and that if we continue to He says, essentially, that although Rishi Sunak was very strong on his rhetoric about leaving the golden age behind him, which was a clear sort of dig at George Osborne, actually his new strategy is one which seems to involve working quite closely with China. He talks about a long-term view of China, understanding that China is an important part of our, international future. Bit of a fudge and very, very different from the Rishi Sunak that we saw over the summer leadership campaign when he went all guns blazing on how China was this huge systemic threat. So people like Ian Duncan-Smith, and let's remember, Ian Duncan-Smith still holds a lot of sway among Conservative backbenchers. There is a big caucus of anti-China Conservative MPs led by Ian Duncan-Smith. And if he's making these sort of noises, it suggests that there's probably a lot of displeasure on the Conservative backbenchers about what seems to be a different sort of strategy on China than either Liz Truss or Boris Johnson was
and of course,
following.
this man, Xi Jinping, the president, now having to cope with all these protests across the Chinese cities, the particular problems in Shanghai and Beijing, although they seem to have quietened down with all the police action at the moment. But here we've got the Chinese ambassador being summoned after the treatment of this BBC journalist, Ed Lawrence. And that may well be some kind of focus for all these backbenchers, saying, look, we really need to be a lot harder with the Chinese.
Yeah, definitely. I think this has sort of focused minds. That said, Ian Duncan-Smith's mind is always pretty focused on China.
True,
and, of course, these protests aren't by any means the first sort of uprising that we've seen in China, and Ian Duncan-Smith has been very strong on this ever since the Uyghur Muslim scandal started to break. So Rishi Sunak, if he does pursue a more China-friendly policy, is going to have Ian Duncan-Smith and, as I say, this quite large caucus of Conservative MPs knocking on his door over and over again, which will make it quite difficult for him to push ahead with any sort of pro-China, as it were, policy.
And, of course, we'll monitor what's happening on the streets of China. But as we've been saying, it looks as if the Chinese police have been cracking down, particularly on the use of phones and various apps that have been helping all these organisations stage their protests. Olivia, for the moment, thank you for that. We'll see what emerges, of course, as we get more from China. But let's talk about problems here now, with law enforcement agencies in multiple European countries smashing one of Europe's biggest drugs rings, responsible for controlling more than a third of the cocaine trade across the continent. Now, a British man suspected of being the leader of that group, among 49 arrested in an operation dismantling what authorities described as a super cartel. This activity's funded lavish lifestyles with luxury homes across 6 countries, large amounts of cash being seized, along with 30 tonnes of cocaine, luxury cars and other high-end goods worth millions of pounds. Our Home and Security editor Mark White has the details.
Across multiple countries, coordinated raids to smash one of Europe's biggest drugs rings. In Spain, France, Belgium, the Netherlands and the United Arab Emirates, 49 people were detained. They're all suspected of being members of a super cartel, believed responsible for supplying more than a third of Europe's illicit trade in cocaine. Among those arrested, a British man in Dubai, suspected of leading the crime group. He'd fled to the UAE from Spain, where he was also wanted for kidnap. €500,000 were recovered across a number of properties. And at multiple locations, law enforcement uncovered the evidence of lavish lifestyles. Luxury living, which authorities say was funded by criminality. High-end homes where the suspects lived and controlled the trade in drugs and money laundering. Garages stuffed full with expensive motorbikes. And elsewhere, luxury sports cars. There was, we're told, nothing discreet about the lives these suspects were living. The organised crime group is suspected of shipping cocaine from South America into Europe for distribution throughout the continent. The UK's National Crime Agency says the shipping routes across the Atlantic are constantly exploited by the criminal gangs.
The majority of the production is America, Colombia, Peru, and the routing from there en masse comes mainly through container ship, direct towards Europe, often into the ports of either Antwerp or Rotterdam. and then on land overwards towards the UK or on the container and coming into ports at the UK south.
During more than 10 days of operational activity to dismantle this organised crime group, authorities say they seized more than 30 tonnes of cocaine. There's no doubt these raids are a major blow to the cartels flooding Europe with Class A drugs. But this is a highly lucrative trade that clearly funded luxurious lifestyles in multiple countries. Authorities are more than aware that other organised crime groups will soon attempt to exploit the gap in the market created by the dismantling of this super cartel. Mark White, GB News.
Well, Mark's joining us in the studio now. Mark, extraordinary pictures. I mean, that collection of cars in that garage, hypercars. I mean, each one worth €300,000, we're being told. I mean, the figures are staggering, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, this organised crime group collected, we're told, many, many millions of pounds from their trade in illicit drugs. And of course, they used that to fund what was, without doubt, a lavish lifestyle. You saw from the pictures some of the homes that they were living in, as you said, the cars, the motorcycles, the watches, the ready cash that was everywhere. And they were running this trade, according to the authorities, from these addresses. Now, the leader of this organised crime group, a British man, had, we're told, fled to Dubai from the Costa del Sol.
You nearly said Costa del Crime, as it's otherwise known as. Yeah.
And he was wanted for kidnap, and he'd gone to Dubai. 6 arrests that took place in Dubai, so quite a number of people actually living and working in what has become a Costa del Crime, if you like, down in the United Arab Emirates.
Right.
It really has become an area where quite a few criminal networks and organisations are being run from, because clearly it's a bit more difficult to get hold of people that far down.
Yeah. One assumes there was a huge surveillance operation underway before they actually moved in. I mean, talk that Europol was involved in this, but we saw from the pictures, obviously the Spanish Guardia Civil was directly involved in the arrests on the Costa del Sol. And I think that the ports being used were Barcelona, Valencia, Algeciras, with containers, literally container ships full of drugs being brought in.
Well, this is it. The cocaine trade, it's largely, and the vast majority of it comes from South America. It's expanding all the time. They've seized, we're told, 30 tonnes of cocaine related to this. Now, that sounds like an awful lot, and it is clearly an awful lot, but actually the worldwide cocaine trade is some 1,500 tonnes of cocaine that's seized every year. So that's not the cocaine that eventually finds its way up the noses of people right across the world. But 1,500 tonnes of cocaine is enormous, and they are often using shipping containers to do that transatlantic voyage to ports, as you mentioned, those southern European ports, also ports like Antwerp and Rotterdam in the Netherlands as well, where they're brought in and distributed right across Europe, and including, of course, to the UK.
Yeah. But one Mr. Big arrested, at least a British man, of course, details to be revealed as yet. We'll see what they say on that. But Mark, thanks for bringing us an update on that. Also, coming up, we've got the latest from this place. Yes, the clouds are gathering a bit, temperatures dropping and nighttime drawing near. But it's for a showdown for what's being dubbed the Battle of Britain, of course. 7 p.m, Wales versus England. We'll have the latest view live from Doha, including the weather forecast there. What about the weather forecast here? Coming up for you.
Hello again, I'm Aidan McGivern from the Met Office. Certainly been a gloomy start to the day for many, with extensive low cloud, mist and fog. Visibility slowly improves today, but for many it is a dull day, but it's a dry day. The weather front's out in the west, being held back by a ridge of high pressure. But it's that ridge of high pressure with its light winds that has led to that extensive low cloud, mist and fog development overnight. And some stubborn fog patches will remain into the afternoon for the central lowlands, Vale of York, Welsh Marches, for example, and across much of England into East Wales, southern Scotland, extensive low cloud and mistiness. But around the fringes of the UK, west and north in particular, some sunshine coming through, and 10 or 11 Celsius at best, particularly towards the southwest, mid to high single figures where we've got the mist, low cloud and fog. Some showers will be close to the far southeast through the day and overnight, but for the vast majority it's staying dry for the time being. And again, overnight we'll see that low cloud, mist and fog developing. So once again, a misty start to the day, some poor visibility on the roads first thing. I think northern Scotland, West Wales, southwest England, most likely to see a bright start, but with a touch of frost here. And for Northern Ireland, here the cloud will thicken through the morning with some outbreaks of rain edging in from the west. Not a great deal of rain, but rain nevertheless. A keen breeze coming up from the south here. 10 or 11 Celsius, 12 Celsius in the far southwest, but for many where we keep the extensive low cloud through the afternoon, temperatures at mid to high single figures. Into Wednesday evening, again we've got that extensive low cloud. I think it will lower further through the night on Wednesday night, and that means Thursday will start off with widespread fog, some difficult driving conditions with very poor visibility about, but brighter skies arrive on Friday and Saturday, albeit with lower temperatures.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Deebs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Mark Stein. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
Why not take us home with you by visiting the GB News shop at gbnews.store. You'll find all the official merchandise, a really good present actually for yourself, your friends or your family.
We ship across the UK mainland at no extra cost. GB News, the People's Channel.
Hello, I'm Esther McVeigh.
And I'm Philip Davis.
Whether you're watching or listening on TV, online or on radio, we handpick the latest stories, debates and expert opinions for your weekend. So whether that's politics, news or showbiz, we've got it covered.
Join us every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock on GB News.
Monday to Thursday on GB News, it's Bev Turner Today from 10 a.m. We're going to be here for you, our GB News family, to keep you up to date, but also make you smile.
The guy went from puberty to adultery.
And I can't wait to bring a few of my own opinions.
I have no time for cultural totalitarianism.
We'll engage in passionate, but always polite debate, with your thoughts and opinions at the centre of it all. Monday to Thursday, 10 till 12, on TV, on radio and online.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
Welcome to GB News Live with me, Mark Longhurst. Just 5 hours to go until perhaps the greatest showdown between England and Wales since Edward I invaded in 1277. It says here. Well, this is the scene in Doha as the sun sets, fans ramping up the hype, and as Gareth Bale and Harry Kane prepare their men for the Battle of Britain. We'll be live in Doha, in Manchester, Wrexham and London with all the build-up to that big game. The Prime Minister setting out his approach to China in a major foreign policy speech. He's declared the golden era of relations is over, but some have criticised him of appeasement. We'll ask a China expert what difference it will make as the protests continue in Beijing and Shanghai. Meanwhile, Energy Secretary Grant Shapps boots China out of plans for the Sizewell C nuclear plant and announces the launch of the Great British Nuclear Project, GBN for short, all promoting British energy security. We'll ask a nuclear skeptic for his take on that. And let us know who you're supporting tonight. Email us at gbviews@gbnews.uk. Suggest a scoreline too. But now it's news headlines with Rosie.
Good afternoon, 2 minutes past 2. I'm Rosie Wright. Let's get you up to date.
The number of people in England and Wales who describe themselves as Christian has fallen below half of the population for the first time. The latest data from the ONS shows 46.2% of us identified as Christian when the census was carried out last year. That compares to over 59% a decade ago. The number of people who say they have no religion has increased also by 12 percentage points. The government's given the go-ahead to build the Sizewell C nuclear power plant and committed £700 million to the scheme. The plant's being developed by the French energy giant EDF and it's going to be built in Suffolk. Ministers say the move will create 10,000 highly skilled jobs and provide relatively low-carbon power to the equivalent of 6 million homes for more than 50 years. The Business Secretary, Grant Shapps, says the announcement means greater energy independence for the UK.
It's a combination between taxpayers' money but also private investment, and that's, as you rightly say, is the next stage. But it's a sign of, if you like, the confidence that the British government has in nuclear as part of our energy mix. And a very, very important point, which has been driven home so clearly by Putin's illegal invasion of Ukraine and all that's done to energy prices, that we must have a mix of energy in this country.
China's ambassador to the UK has been summoned to the Foreign Office over a diplomatic row following the arrest and alleged beating of a British journalist covering COVID protests. A heavy police presence has been reported in several cities in China to deter further protests after unrest over the weekend. Answering an urgent question on the matter, the Foreign Office Minister David Rutley says the UK government will continue to protect British values.
More broadly, we recognise that China poses a systemic challenge to our values and interests, as highlighted again by the Prime Minister yesterday, a challenge that grows more acute as it moves towards greater authoritarianism. That's why we're taking robust action to protect our interests, to stand up for our values. That includes imposing sanctions, leading action at the UN and strengthening our supply chain resilience. Let me assure members that as part of our frank relationship with China, we will continue to raise our human rights concerns at the highest levels.
A section of the new online safety bill has been removed following criticism by some Conservatives that it posed a risk to free speech. The amendment means big tech, like social media sites, will no longer be required to remove harmful material if it's deemed to be legal. The online safety bill is due to return to Parliament next week after repeatedly being delayed. The head of NATO says Russia's trying to use winter in Ukraine as a weapon of war. Speaking at a meeting of foreign ministers in Bucharest, Jens Stoltenberg urged member states to increase their supply of military assistance. He's also called on countries to pledge more winter aid as civilians in Ukraine struggle with the cold and the dark due to Russian attacks on infrastructure. Mr. Stoltenberg says President Putin's targeting of civilian infrastructure only strengthens NATO's resolve.
There's a brutal war and there is a deliberate attack on critical services, heating, light, water, gas. And these brutal attacks against critical civilian infrastructure is only encouraging NATO allies to do even more.
3 refugees have been rescued in Spain after they were discovered clinging to the rudder of an oil tanker. The stowaways were spotted as the vessel anchored in the port of Las Palmas in Gran Canaria. The ship had sailed from Nigeria. It's believed the migrants had survived 11 days at sea. Spain's Maritime Safety and Rescue Society say the individuals have been transferred to the port where they're receiving medical attention for mild dehydration. Now it is all to play for tonight in Qatar as England and Wales go head-to-head in the final match of Group B. Let's find out about anticipation and preparations. Our Northwest reporter Sophie Reaper is in Manchester, where fans are preparing to watch the game later. Tell us what's happening.
Well, today is the day England will play Wales for the first time ever in the final stages of a World Cup. I'm in Manchester, where over the coming hours, fans will be pouring into the city centre to make sure they get a front row seat for this match. Now, I was in Manchester for the England versus USA game last Friday, and the atmosphere was absolutely electric. Expectations are going to be high for England tonight. All they have to do to get through to the next stage is to win. In fact, actually, all they have to do to not go through is to not lose to Wales by at least 4 goals. So, although that's very unlikely, I think there will still be some nervous faces here in Manchester tonight.
Sophie, thank you. Of course, we'll bring you up to speed with the results later on today. Right now, though, you are up to date. You're on GB News. Back to Mark.
Yes, Rosie, thank you. So just 5 hours to go until that Battle of Britain at 7 this evening, with Wales and England meeting in Doha for that final Group B game. Now, let's show the current Group B table. England sitting at the top, Iran in second on 3 points, USA on 2, and Wales down on the bottom on just 1 point. But here's the rub. All 4 teams with a chance of making the 2 knockout places. So look at the various scenarios, with all 4 teams qualifying, perhaps by Wales needing to beat England by at least 1 goal difference, and hoping that Iran and USA play out a draw against each other. Wales would then go through on superior goal difference. Iran could go through for the first time ever if they beat the USA, but a draw would also be enough if Wales lose to England. USA, they have to win against Iran to survive the group. It's complicated. But let's simplify things by joining Paul Hawkins at the Souk Waqif in Doha, because it's all about the excitement growing there ahead of the crucial game. Paul, what sort of indication about the numbers of supporters that have made it from both England and Wales there?
Yeah, thousands. We would estimate, I don't know, somewhere between 2,000 and 3,000 Wales fans that have come to Doha, in addition to the Welsh expats that live here, and also 3,000 or 4,000 England fans. So you'd expect there to be more England fans in the stadium than Welsh fans, as a Brazil fan, Iran fan makes their way past us. A little mini Iran train, a fan train, making its way down the Souk, because of course Iran playing the USA at the same time as England are playing Wales. But yeah, Wales fans have been gathering at those Wales fan parties and here in the Souk. That's where we were earlier today, taking in 5 pints and a curry for 80 quid. Expensive, but worth gathering there because it feels like a piece of Wales on the first floor of the Intercontinental Hotel. This is what Rodri Williams, the fan party manager, had to tell us.
You know, Six Nations rugby, big occasion. Home Nations football match, massive occasion. This is the World Cup. This might never happen ever again. So that's how special it is for everybody, for Welsh fans, for English fans, that we're here facing each other. And what makes it even more incredible is that it's all up for grabs. 4 teams are going for those 2 places tonight. Yes, some are in the driving seat. We've only got 1 point. England have got 3. Iran have got 3. But that's how tight it is. And when you're Welsh, you only need a glimmer of hope to grab onto something. And look, that's why we love sport. That's why we love the FIFA World Cup.
Yeah, it's been phenomenal, the demand for those Wales fans' party packages that Rodri and his team are putting on. Listen, Wales tonight, let's make no bones about it. They're underdogs, right? But it's a British derby. Anything can happen, as we've seen in this World Cup. So the Wales manager, Rob Page, hoping to invoke the Saudi, the Japanese and the Ghanaian spirit of the underdog that we've seen at this tournament.
This tournament has shown that every team is beatable. I really do. So, of course, England are beatable. They've got a wonderful pool of players to choose from, I might add. So whatever team he puts on that pitch is going to be a tough challenge for us, and of course they're going to be favourites to win the games.
But make no mistake about the rivalry between the 2 teams and how that will help to galvanise the Welsh. It's something that the England manager Gareth Southgate is acutely aware of.
It's like any 2 countries whose borders are next to each other. There's a competitive rivalry. For me, it's a great sporting rivalry. We've got to focus on performance. We've got to play well. You know, we've got to bring our quality to the table and give that the best opportunity we have of making the difference on the pitch.
Well, Paul, before you get elbowed out of the way again, let's ask you a few questions about the teams. You won't get that till 6 o'clock, of course, UK time. But the big questions about both captains. Harry Kane, suggestions he's got this ankle problem. And Gareth Bale, of course, for Wales, who's really not performed that well. Suggestions he's not got the matches behind him to have fitness for the full 90 minutes.
Yeah, look, Harry Kane apparently is fit. He has been suffering from that ankle injury, and as anyone will tell you, suffered those kind of injuries, you still tend to play within yourself because you're scared about pushing yourself 100%, because you could then rupture that ankle ligament or injure yourself severely. So maybe it's been playing on Harry Kane's mind, but the England camp say he is fit. In terms of Gareth Bale, look, he moved to play in the States in a league that is inferior to the one he had been playing in, or at least playing part-time for Real Madrid, the Spanish league, one of the top leagues in Europe. So one could argue that maybe he hasn't been testing himself against the very best, but he did score in the American Cup final, and you're right. And he's played very well while he's been over there. So maybe he hasn't been testing himself against the best opposition, but he would certainly argue that, look, you don't have to be testing yourself against the best opposition when you're facing England at the World Cup.
Yeah, which your friend has just attested to, obviously. For the moment, thank you for that in the souk. We'll be back to you a little later as, of course, the excitement and the tension grows too. Paul Hawkins, our man in Doha. Let's bring you some breaking news that we are getting from the Health Security Agency, which says that thousands of positive COVID-19 cases reported as negative could have led to the deaths of 20 people. That's coming from the UK Health Security Agency. Estimates, so it's not actually hard and fast as at the moment, but it's a blunder at a laboratory, which clearly is now leading to some concern. We'll update you as we get more on that, but that's just coming through to us here at GB News, and we'll get more analysis in a moment. But let's return to the football now. We've heard about the Welsh fans. What about the England fans? Let's go live to the Kirby estate in southeast London with 3 lions and many flags, and Alice Porter in the lineup as well. With what we were hearing earlier, Alice, were the flag ninjas. Explain to us.
Indeed, the flag ninjas. I've heard all about it on the Kirby estate today. The flag ninjas are the people who go out in the dead of night and put flags up on the estate. Now, I have to confess, this is probably the time that I should admit that I'm not the biggest football fan. However, I think I've been converted today, because how can you not be? I mean, looking around at this estate now, I mean, there are 400 flags out on the estate, and this is a tradition that has been going on for about 10 years now. It started off with just a couple of flags, and then it really grew from there. And they've got them outside each flag. What I particularly like, you can see it actually in this flag to my left there, is some of the flags actually have names of people on the estate who've passed away, and they've put their names on the flags to remember them. And it really has been an enormous community event that they do this whenever England are competing. This was something they did very much in the summer when the Lionesses were playing in the World Cup, and everyone came out onto the streets. They had a screening there. I don't know if you can see, but there's actually a mural there of Frank Kirby, and had lots of people who came out. And today it's going to be no exception as England take on Wales at 7 o'clock this evening. I've been speaking to lots of people on the estate, and they all say that this is very much an inclusive event, that people can come together, because whilst you may see, if we walk down a little bit, quite a few England flags, there's also, I think we've got a Portuguese flag there, and here all these other flags from other countries as well, and they are all very much represented as well. People who've arranged all this tell me that they're happy for anyone of different nationalities to come and put their flags up, as long as they're competing in the World Cup. That's the only rule. Apart from that, people can put up whatever flag they like. And I have to say, it has been lovely coming down here, because the Kirby estate has become quite iconic in southeast London whenever England are playing, and we've had so many people coming up since I've been here from the crack of dawn, coming, taking photos. I mean, why wouldn't you? It looks absolutely stunning. What's been wonderful is hearing the community spirit from people who are coming together to try and cheer on England as they take on Wales later this evening.
Yeah, not a Welsh dragon to be seen, just the Lions. Alice, for the moment, thank you. And maybe someone will make you a cup of tea in that special Kirby estate mug you've been given as a fan. Thank you very much indeed. Let's just update you on this breaking news that we were bringing you about this blunder at a laboratory which saw thousands of positive COVID-19 cases reported as negative. There's more detail coming through now from the UK Health Security Agency. This is a laboratory in Wolverhampton. It meant that 39,000 PCR tests reported as negative should have been positive. This took place between September the 2nd and October the 12th, mainly in the southwest of England. Now, the agency is saying that many people, as a result, will have continued with their daily lives and not isolated, even though they had COVID-19 back in 2021. Experts from the health agency estimating the blunder may have led to around 55,000 additional infections. Now, they estimate that with each person receiving a false negative result going on to affect around 2 other people on average, that meant there would have been some 680 additional hospital additions, and there could have been just over 20 additional deaths in those most affected areas. So they've suspended testing operations at the laboratory following reports of inaccurate results. The investigation now concluding the error occurred because staff at the laboratory set the threshold levels for reporting positive and negative results incorrectly. Richard Gleave, the director and lead investigator, saying that we've concluded that staff errors have led to the cause of incorrect reporting. In our view, there was no single action that could have been taken differently to prevent the error arising. However, our report sets out clear recommendations to reduce the risk of incidents like this happening again. More reaction, of course, as it comes through, but alarming statistics there that there could have been 20 at least avoidable deaths in that particular instance. Well, let's return to the football with the excitement building ahead of the England-Wales game. Well, one Wales fan, Andrew Dowling, also a singer-songwriter, has released a charity single ahead of the tournament called We've Got the Red Wall. Let's briefly remind ourselves of some of that wonderful song.
Viva Gareth Bale, he scored the goals for Wales to get us to the World Cup in Qatar. With help from Big Wayne, who made the important saves, we were able to see off Austria and Ukraine.
Well, that's the song. What about the match? Let's speak to Andrew now, who's joining us. Andrew, you're featuring Gareth Bale very much to the fore in that. We still don't know, of course, if he's going to be at the coming into the game, first of all, whether he'll be on the bench, with some question marks about his fitness. Are you feeling a little anxious?
Nah, let's not question Gareth Bale. He's a superhero of many Welsh people. I just think that, if he's going to be on that pitch this evening, I have no doubt about that he will deliver something magical. Yeah, he is getting on a bit in his career at this moment in time, but, he's Gareth Bale. He produces magical moments many times. So, yeah, why not this evening when we need to get a result?
Yeah, and let's reflect, it's the first time for 64 years, of course, that Wales are in this position. There's a lot of hope riding on it. But what do you suspect are going to be the key moments? Because, of course, I think Aaron Ramsey's not really been at his best either. Although, on the other side, Harry Kane doesn't seem to be 100% fit.
Yeah, I think whoever steps up for Wales tonight will, play with passion, pride, honour, with the red jersey. Obviously with being Wales, we're the smallest nation outside of Qatar that's qualified for this tournament. So it's, very difficult for us to sort of, I guess we're sort of punching well above our weight already just being there. But now that we are there, we want that journey to continue. So whoever's going to come in, we need all our best players. But ultimately, I don't think there's going to be a problem in motivating our Cymru team to play against our friendly neighbours next door.
And the fans don't need much motivating, as we've seen with our cameras out there. The red wall enjoying themselves, the faces getting redder and redder by the moment. Tell us about the song now, because, of course, in the Rhondda you've got plenty of male voice choirs, and this is slightly different from the usual sort of Welsh choral fare.
Yeah, so the song idea came after the Ukraine match when we beat them in the playoff final in June, and I've always sort of written songs, in my life and enjoyed music, sort of picking up instruments and singing. It's always been a passion of mine, but I really wanted to do something different for this. I do a lot of fundraising for a charity called Gol Cymru, which raises funds for underprivileged children. So I'm part of the Wales football fans team. So wherever we go in the world to play whoever as an opposition with the Wales team, the fans have a game against them as well. So all that is to raise money, and then we go and donate gifts to orphanages, children's centres, wherever we may be playing. And that could be anything from an orphanage needing beds. It could be other things like microwaves or football kits or anything sort of needed. So that was sort of like the inspiration behind me wanting to sort of do a song. And I'm really grateful of, all the people that sort of got involved, because everybody's donated their time to sort of get involved in the song, which is fantastic as well. And the sort of, well, not just the UK media has picked up on this song, it's gone global. And for me, part of the importance of that is not only to raise the charity side of things with Gol Cymru, but also it's a bilingual song. So, Cymraeg is going out to the world. The Welsh language is rising very, very strong in this part of the world at the moment. And it's been so nice to see, Welsh being spoken and used at a World Cup.
Yeah, and the song may be earning a bit more money if they go further. But Andrew, I have to say to you, thank you. Diolch yn fawr. Thanks for joining us.
Diolch yn fawr. Diolch.
And plenty more to come, of course, from Doha, as we're being told the temperature's dropping a little bit, so maybe things will be a little more comfortable for the players there. What about the temperature in North Wales? Let's speak to our reporter Jack Carson, who's in Wrexham. Not quite as warm as Doha, as we can see from your coat, but they are going to be outside watching a big screen there in Wrexham.
Yeah, that's right, Mike. To be honest, I kind of think me and Paul had swapped places and I was in my shorts in Doha, but here I am wrapped up in Wrexham. It is one of two big fan zones that the council have put on here. They're free to enter completely. I was speaking to Nigel Williams, who's the lead member for the city centre and events, and he was saying, look, costs of living, let's put something on that people can come out to for free and enjoy themselves and enjoy the atmosphere. Of course, this is the first World Cup for Wales since 1958, so why not put on something for fans to come together and, like you say, create that red wall of all those Dragons fans. As you can see behind me, the Newsday Hotel. This is actually the building that the Wales FA was formed in back in 1876. They've been playing England since 1879. England currently on their longest unbeaten run against Wales. They've been unbeaten against Wales since 1984. Last time competitively was, of course, Euro 2016 when Daniel Sturridge got that late 2-1 goal to make it 2-1. Like you say, a friendly. We won 3-0 a couple of years ago in 2020. But here at the fan zone, it's going to be busy. Up to 2,500 people capacity here on this high street fan zone. So we are really going to see a red wall. There's a few Wales fans on the street already, starting to turn up, starting to get themselves a drink and kind of get settled in to the cold weather here, because it does take some getting used to. I left my gloves in the car. I might have to go grab them for later on tonight. But it is going to be busy. We're going to have some entertainment here on the stage from 5 o'clock, and that's when the atmosphere is really going to kick in. Welsh fans optimistic, a mix, some saying that yes, they're going to beat England, they could well be out of this tournament after tonight, so they just want the Wales players to go on the pitch and give it their all. Obviously England don't necessarily need a win, but for confidence going into the later stages, that's exactly what Gareth Southgate's men are going to want. But here in Wrexham, starting to build up a bit of an atmosphere, a few people more coming, and I'm sure later on it's going to be a lot busier.
Yeah, and Jack, we assume that it won't be 80 quid for 5 pints and a curry, as Paul was telling us there in Doha.
I'm hoping not, because my bank balance won't survive that either. So, I'm hoping it'll be a lot cheaper. But yeah, it's a nice, friendly, free event for fans to come to and just enjoy Wales being in their first World Cup since 1958.
Indeed, and you'll be too busy for a curry anyway. But for the moment in Wrexham, thank you very much for updating us there. Plenty more to come on the World Cup, both in Manchester, Wrexham, London and Doha, and plenty more too on those China protests. Is the UK ignoring what's happening on the streets of China? We'll be getting a view on that, but let's take a short break first.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
And the national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here. You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
I think I've seen probably quite enough of Matt Hancock to last me a lifetime.
I'll also be getting to know you better, travelling to find out what you think about the politicians who are fighting for your vote.
They've got to get this country back on track.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. only on GB News, on TV, radio and online.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing! You see, amazing! You remind me of me in the European Parliament.
But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
And welcome back to GB News Live. Now, let's remind you, in China, police have been tracking down those demonstrators who've joined the protests in Shanghai, Beijing and other cities. While here in the Commons, MPs have been calling for tougher action to protect those British citizens caught up in the unrest, particularly that British journalist Ed Lawrence. Well, the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, warning that the golden era of UK-Chinese relations was over, and that the UK had to evolve its approach to China. However, some prominent Conservatives describing his language as close to appeasement, in particular Ian Duncan-Smith. Well, joining us now, Robert Fox, defence editor at the Evening Standard. Robert, thanks for joining us. Good to speak to you again. First to what's happening out in China. It seems that the Chinese police are using quite sophisticated techniques now to track down phones and apps and so on to get to the protesters.
This is the way of things now. We know that the Chinese have excellent surveillance. We believe they've actually taken down some intelligence networks from Western agencies like the CIA by interrupting, hacking all conversations. It looks as if even encryption is pretty thin. And as we have discovered this time, that they're not bothering so much to round up demonstrators at the time, but to photograph them and then using visual identification methods very familiar to the FBI. And then a few hours later or a day later, there's a knock on the door and they're being taken in. It's very sophisticated. It's quite unnerving. But it seems that President Xi is not in quite the place that he would like to be on these demonstrations. It was just after his triumph, so-called, on the 20th Congress of the party, where he more or less shoved himself in for presidency for life by going for a third 5-year term, hinting there's going to be possibly a fourth. But there are problems, and the problems are that this is just so widespread.
And, of course, it's in the cities with people who got access to the outside world, many youngsters, and clearly they are calling for his removal as well as reacting to this sort of COVID lockdown. So what do we in the West do? We've had this speech now from Rishi Sunak calling for a new approach, but Ian Duncan-Smith saying it just amounts to appeasement.
Yes, I think we have to be very careful about the rhetoric here because the Prime Minister Sunak said the golden era is over, and some real China experts, and there are quite a number across the world, say, whenever was there really a serious golden era? They've welched on their agreements of two systems, one country. On Hong Kong, they have been extremely difficult with allies, particularly the incursions right across the Pacific in fishing fleets, which is a really big operation now. Yes, we were rather friendly, and indeed it's from Mr. Duncan-Smith and Mr. Sunak's own party, inviting Chinese participation in nuclear power and in G5 communications, namely the Huawei fiasco, encouraged by Mrs. May when she was Prime Minister and in the Home Office initially. There's got to be a lot of rowing back. But on the other hand, it's no use having empty words about this. Warnings, caution. It'll be very interesting to see what the outcome is after the summoning of the Chinese ambassador today because of the detention and arrest of the BBC cameraman. But that's the way it will go. Why do I suggest caution? Because strategically, so much is now interlinked. And the Americans, the British particularly, are worried about how this coincides with all kinds of things related to Ukraine.
Yeah, and of course the fact that China on side against Russia would be a useful diplomatic tool. But Robert, thanks as ever for your view, and we'll see what emerges on the streets of Beijing and Shanghai in the days ahead. Thank you very much indeed. Robert Fox, Defence Editor at the Evening Standard there. Well, coming up, the new nuclear plant for Suffolk is given the go-ahead, but is it the right way ahead? More of that after the news update with Rosie.
Good afternoon, 2:34. I'm Rosie Wright, keeping you up to date today on GB News. An error at a lab which saw thousands of positive COVID cases reported as negative could have led to the deaths of 20 people. Investigators at the UK Health Security Agency say the mistake at the Wolverhampton lab meant nearly 40,000 PCR tests were reported as negative instead of positive. It happened between September and October last year. It's thought that the error led to around 55,000 additional infections. Bosses at the UK HSA say they fully accept the findings and recommendations made in the report. The number of people in England and Wales describing themselves as Christian has fallen below half of the population for the first time. The latest data from the ONS shows 46.2% identified as Christian when the census was carried out last year. That compares to over 59% a decade ago. The number of people also who say they have no religion has increased by 12 percentage points. The government's given the go-ahead to build the Sizewell C nuclear power plant and has committed £700 million to the scheme. The plant's being developed by the French energy giant EDF and it's going to be built in Suffolk. Ministers say the move will create 10,000 highly skilled jobs and will provide reliable, low-carbon power to the equivalent of 6 million homes for more than 50 years. The Business Secretary, Grant Shapps, says the announcement means greater energy independence for the UK. China's ambassador to the UK has been summoned to the Foreign Office over a diplomatic row following the arrest and alleged beating of a BBC journalist covering COVID protests. A heavy police presence has been reported in several cities in China in an attempt to deter further protests after unrest over the weekend. Earlier today, the Foreign Office Minister answered an urgent question on the matter. He says the UK government is demanding a full and thorough explanation over the arrest of Ed Lawrence. We're on your TV, online and your radio. It's GB News.
Every morning from 6 o'clock, we'll wake you up with GB News Breakfast with all the stories you didn't know from the night before.
So whether it's serious news, entertainment, or your own views from all over our great nation, we're here to kick off your day with a smile.
The national media should be reflecting and reporting what's happening here. You will notice the northwestern accents.
Whether you're with us on TV, radio, or online, every morning, it's breakfast from 6 a.m. Hope you can join us.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. for Gloria Meets. In exclusive interviews, I'll be finding out who our politicians really are and what they really think.
I think I've seen probably quite enough of Matt Hancock to last me a lifetime.
I'll also be getting to know you better, travelling to find out what you think about the politicians who are fighting for your vote.
They've got to get this country back on track.
Join me every Sunday at 6 p.m. only on GB News, on TV, radio and online.
We are GB News, right across the nation. You can get us on television, on radio, on digital. We're absolutely everywhere.
Amazing. You see, amazing.
You remind me of me in the European Parliament. But here's the most important bit. We are not part of the mainstream establishment. We think and speak just like you do. We are the People's Channel.
Magnificent. That's really, really thoughtful.
Come and join us on GB News, the People's News Channel.
My name's Tom Harwood and join me 9:30 a.m. every weekday for The Briefing, your one-stop shop for everything you need to know about what's going on in politics today.
I wonder if this is a deal that might need to be like the biscuits in this factory, twice baked.
Is there not an opportunity here to win out against the extremes?
Tom Harwood, GB News.
What are you going to do about it?
Things should have been done differently, and they certainly are being done differently.
Don't miss it. The Briefing with me, Tom Harwood, 9:30 Monday to Friday on GB News.
And welcome back to GB News Live. Now, the government's announced it is to go ahead with building a new nuclear power plant in Suffolk. The campaign group Stop Sizewell C said that could neither lower energy bills nor give the UK energy independence. But the plant is due to cost some 20 billion in the end, 700 million initially. In the past hour or so, the Energy Secretary Grant Shapps confirming China will not be involved in the project, and also announcing the creation of Great British Nuclear to promote what he called energy sovereignty, looking at other nuclear projects in the future. Well, joining us now, Dr. Paul Dorfman from the University of Sussex and chair the Nuclear Consulting Group analysing nuclear issues. Thank you very much indeed for joining us, Dr. Dorfman. First of all, to what's been announced on Sizewell C, it's been long awaited, and one wonders how long it is actually before it actually comes on stream and starts providing us with energy.
Well, there's lots of hurdles here. The actual final investment decision is not now, but maybe in about a year and a half, and there are lots of hurdles in the way. As discussed, China had a 20% stake in the development of this nuclear power plant, and France EDF is in terrible dire straits, 45 billion in debt, expecting a 29 billion hit on their profits this year, with half of their nuclear reactors offline, facing a 50 to 100 billion pound bill for their mandatory safety upgrades. So in terms of problems associated with this plant, there are very many. And the main one is this. Supposedly, the deal is that the UK government takes a 20% stake, the French government takes a 20% stake, the remaining 60% is supposed to be found via market investors. And the market has fled nuclear, simply because nuclear is uneconomic, overcost, overtime, everywhere that it's been built.
Yeah, and therefore, in a way, perhaps it's not the future, it's yesterday's technology, given all the safety aspects and, of course, the cost needed to put it in place. You touched on EDF, and, of course, we learned that yesterday there were concerns about power supply here in the UK with the interconnector from where you are in France because of those very problems with the French nuclear plants.
France is now importing power, firing up its coal. it's in huge trouble. And don't EDF tell you that the build at Hinkley Point C is going any better, because they're instigating a force majeure clause in their contract with the UK government to elude any penalties if Hinkley Point C comes online around 2030 plus. Now, BEIS, which is the government department involved, have given evidence to Parliament that new nuclear runs between 20 and 100% increase from point of decision, and between 13 and 17 years, which puts, with the best will in the world, Sizewell C, first generation, about 2040, far too late for our energy crisis, far too late for our climate crisis.
What do you make of the other nuclear option that's been talked about, these off-the-shelf units has been discussed with Rolls-Royce, much smaller, but can be placed perhaps rather more quickly around the country? I mean, do you think that's a viable option for this great British nuclear group that's been announced?
It has. I'll answer that, but first let me prefix this by saying that around 84% of all new electricity power provision additions worldwide last year was renewables. But coming back to your question, the fact is the Royals' effort is not small. It's not an SMR. It's not a small modular reactor. It's about the same size as the first Magnox reactors. It's about half the size of the current sort of main stock of the French fleet. It's about a third the size of the very large reactor being built at Hinkley Point C. So the notion that it's small is simply not true.
OK, so renewables may still be the way forward, even though this government's got problems with onshore wind farms. Dr. Paul Dorfman, thank you very much indeed for joining us. I suspect we'll be speaking to you again. Thank you very much indeed. Now, let's move on to the government dropping its plans to ban legal but harmful web content under the Online Safety Bill. Well, campaigners criticising the move as a watering down of the legislation, but Downing Street insisting it is the right balance to protect free speech. The Culture Secretary, Michelle Donnellan, announcing measures to tackle what she said was the absurd situation surrounding age limits on social media. Well, those proposals require tech firms to show how they enforce user age limits and to publish risk assessments with potential harm to children. Let's get the view now. Jackie Morrissey, Assistant Director of Research and Influencing at Samaritans. And Jackie, I think Samaritans have definitely given this a thumbs down.
Well, yeah, we think it's simple. We think the commitment the government made when it said the UK would be the safest place to be in the world online, we just think that's not going to be met now. So we think it's a huge step backwards that the government is failing to recognise the devastating impact that viewing harmful suicide-related material online that can have. This is legal material which is extremely harmful, and there's not going to be any protections in place for over 18s to see this material.
Yeah, Michelle Donnellan was saying that this relaxation was pertaining to adults and not to do with children. But clearly, when anyone can access material, even though there are safeguards, one wonders how you can actually define that.
Well, you know, we welcome stronger protections for children. That is really, really important. But actually turning 18 doesn't stop you from being vulnerable to the type of content we're talking about, which is content around suicide and self-harm. You know, so suicide and self-harm, they're rarely caused by one thing, but in many cases, the internet is involved. And we've heard from young people aged over the 18 years who have described to us how they were feeling suicidal, how easy it was for them to find information which was extremely harmful for them. It enabled them to know how to take their own lives. And the bill now is absolutely failing to recognise this and protect people at a time when they need it most.
Yeah, and what about the social media providers and the tech firms themselves? It seems that they're basically thinking that it can all go out there and people make up their own minds, that there's no sanction against them.
Well, and that's a partial approach, isn't it, to online safety? That's what we say. We think the government has a duty to protect anyone over the age of 18 properly against this content. And it's just not going to happen as far as we can see now.
So what should be done to actually try and get the government to reconsider this, do you think?
Well, I think they need to listen to the people who've already submitted a huge amount of evidence that actually describes the harm that is available online. You know, they're squandering this opportunity to remove the regulation of legal but harmful.
Yeah.
We need to get the bill back into Parliament and recognise that this legal but harmful clauses are really important within it. So that's what we'd like to see, so that regardless of how old you are, regardless of where you're looking online, you are getting protection from this incredibly harmful content.
Yeah. Jackie Morrissey from Samaritans, thank you for bringing us your reaction. And, of course, we'll see what emerges through the legislation going through Parliament as we speak. Thank you very much indeed. Now, law enforcement agencies across multiple European countries smashing one of Europe's biggest drugs rings, responsible, they say, for controlling more than a third of the cocaine trade across the continent. Well, a British man suspected of being the leader of the crime group among 49 arrested in an operation to dismantle what authorities described as a super cartel. The crime group's activities funding lavish lifestyles with luxury homes across 6 countries. As well as large amounts of cash, police seized 30 tonnes of cocaine, along with luxury cars and other high-end goods worth millions of pounds. Our Home and Security Editor Mark White has the details for us.
Across multiple countries, coordinated raids to smash one of Europe's biggest drugs rings. In Spain, France, Belgium, the Netherlands and the United Arab Emirates, 49 people were detained. They're all suspected of being members of a super cartel, believed responsible for supplying more than a third of Europe's illicit trade in cocaine. Among those arrested, a British man in Dubai, suspected of leading the crime group. He'd fled to the UAE from Spain, where he was also wanted for kidnap. €500,000 were recovered across a number of properties. And at multiple locations, law enforcement uncovered the evidence of lavish lifestyles. Luxury living, which authorities say was funded by criminality. High-end homes where the suspects lived and controlled the trade in drugs and money laundering. Garages stuffed full with expensive motorbikes. And elsewhere, luxury sports cars. There was, we're told, nothing discreet about the lives these suspects were living. The organised crime group is suspected of shipping cocaine from South America into Europe for distribution throughout the continent. The UK's National Crime Agency says the shipping routes across the Atlantic are constantly exploited by the criminal gangs.
The majority of the production is in South America, Colombia, Peru, and the routing from there en masse comes mainly through container ship, direct towards Europe, often into the ports of either Antwerp or Rotterdam, and then on land overwards towards the UK, or staying on the container and coming into ports at the UK south.
During more than 10 days of operational activity to dismantle this organised crime group, authorities say they seized more than 30 tonnes of cocaine. There's no doubt these raids are a major blow to the cartels flooding Europe with Class A drugs. But this is a highly lucrative trade that clearly funded luxurious lifestyles in multiple countries. Authorities are more than aware that other organised crime groups will soon attempt to exploit the gap in the market created by the dismantling of this super cartel. Mark White, GB News.
Mark White with those extraordinary pictures. Well, another extraordinary picture for you now, the nighttime skyline in Doha. We're being told that temperatures are a little cooler than they have been of late, which will be a relief to both England and Wales, of course, ahead of that final group game this evening at 7, both looking to secure a place in the last 16 of the World Cup. Let's just update you a little bit more that we're getting Robert Page suggesting that both Gareth Bale and Aaron Ramsey may be on the bench for the beginning of the game for Wales. He said, and let's remind you, Bale is 33, Ramsey 31. Both players have been below their best, I think even the Wales fans would recognise. And he's saying, Rob Page, it's a big ask for anyone in the environment to go 4 days later. I'm going to pick a team I think can go out and compete against England, whether that's with or without them. I'm not going to give that away. But if they don't start, can they make an impact? That's always been my dilemma, playing games in quick succession. I think that's called leaving us guessing. But let's head to Manchester. Not quite as glorious as Doha's looking at the moment. A bit grey and cold there, Sophie. But nonetheless, I think people are going to be out in the squares watching the giant screens a bit later.
Yeah, we'd expect nothing less from Manchester weather-wise. We're around 4 hours away from kick-off now. I'm outside Manchester Piccadilly, where over the coming hours fans will be arriving in their thousands to make sure they get a good seat ahead of tonight's game. Now, of course, coming into this tournament, there were high expectations for this English side, especially after that 6-2 defeat over Iran. Now, I was here in Manchester for the England versus USA game, and ahead of kick-off, the atmosphere was absolutely electric. We had choruses of Sweet Caroline and It's Coming Home, and everyone was just feeling really quite excited. However, as the game wore on, those doubts started to creep in. People were muttering about Gareth Southgate's capabilities. Why hadn't he made the changes they felt that needed to be made? There were also questions asked about England's captain, Harry Kane. Of course, in the Euros, Harry Kane was England's golden boy, and in fact, ahead of this tournament, there was speculation that he would be going for that golden boot. And yet, even though they managed to beat Iran 6-2, Harry Kane didn't make it onto the score sheet. So the questions tonight is whether Harry Kane is going to be starting and whether or not he'll be able to get on that score sheet. Now, England are coming into this in a strong position. As long as they win tonight, in fact, as long as they don't lose by 4 goals tonight, they'll be going through to the next stage. And although that's very unlikely, I think there'll still be some nervous faces here in Manchester tonight.
Yeah, especially Man City fans wondering if a certain Phil Foden's going to take to the pitch as well. But for the moment there in Manchester, thank you for that. Let's move from Manchester to Doha and speak to our man in the souk. Paul Hawkins is there, who's been soaking up the atmosphere, maybe a bit of curry and a bit of beer as well along the way to keep yourself refreshed for tonight. Perhaps not as much as the Welsh fans. You're indicating they had to buy their beers in units of 5 or 10, Paul. That's going to be something to carry on until 7 o'clock tonight.
Yeah, and if you're not a big drinker, and I'm not, then it's difficult to do it. You've got to kind of maybe buy 1 pack and then of 5, then divvy it up with someone else who's not a big drinker. So I was talking to one couple who said, well, my husband's having 3 and I'm having 2, but then if you fancy another one, you've then got to buy a whole nother 5. So it's kind of an all or nothing, really, which kind of reflects the Welsh performance that they'll need this evening if they're going to progress to the next round. They have to beat England and hope the Iran-USA match finishes in a draw. We'll hear from those Welsh fans who've been sipping beers in just a moment. I just wanted to quickly talk to Spencer, who's joined us in the souk. Spencer, thanks for speaking to us. I'm loving the outfit, by the way.
No problem at all.
Did you get it just for this game?
I did indeed, yes. We've been here for the last week and we're here for the next week. Very much hoping tonight that we either win by 4-0 or more than 4 goals. We want to take our own destiny into our own hands. It's probably very unlikely, mind, but yeah, not really enjoying it here. I noticed what you said earlier about not drinking. I don't drink myself either, so it's been a brilliant World Cup, and such a small country, so all the fans are all together in one place. It's been really good.
How big is England-Wales tonight?
Oh, it's huge. Well, as a Welsh person, it's huge. I mean, this is what we've been through this so many times before, though. This is part of being Welsh. We dream and dream and dream, and then it all comes crashing down at the last moment. But tonight, I think we are going to win by 1 goal. We're going to win 2-1, and I do think Iran are going to draw with America. I think Bale and Ramsey are going to be allowed to play the game they should have been playing for the last 2 games, but for whatever reason didn't play. I think you're about to see some magical free-flowing Welsh football, and I think it will be 2-1.
Couldn't be any worse than the previous England and Wales games, could it?
No, I couldn't.
Spencer, thanks for speaking to us. Really appreciate it.
Thank
you. We'll let Spencer go off into the souk. So that's the view of a sober Wales fan. Here's what's been happening over at the Intercontinental Hotel, the first floor of which has been turned into a little corner of Wales. This is how the Welsh fans have been telling us about how they're celebrating the game later. Look at that. go. Look at that. There you go. It's like the Welsh David Brent. Let's have a chat with Yvonne as well. Thank you for that. Yvonne, how are you feeling? And not about that. Well, actually, about that dancing.
Well, he is 60, so I suppose we can't expect anything.
Is he really? Is he good?
Yeah,
Is it good? How are you feeling about the drinking here in Doha? You've got to be quite strategic, haven't you? Because you can't just have one.
Well, 5 tokens, so you share. I have 2 tokens. My husband has 3, so he has more pints than me. But I don't worry. Don't worry.
So that's okay. That's okay.
Yeah.
How are you feeling about the game, guys?
Oh, I've got pilly palace butterflies in my tummy at the moment.
Yeah. Feeling confident?
Yes.
Yeah. You're not feeling quite as confident.
Quite as confident, but you never know. As the pints are going down, we get more confident.
We know what Iceland did to them in the Euros, so we can do it. Iceland is smaller than us. We can do it.
Well, Paul, congratulations there in the souk.
So that's how the Wales fans.
Yeah, sorry, Paul. I was just going to say congratulations on finding the only non-drinking Welshman in the souk, which was some achievement. But they are enjoying themselves ahead of the game. And one reflects, I guess, no matter what happens on the pitch, this is the first time in 64 years they've managed to get to a World Cup, and they're really making the most of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Yvonne there, who we were chatting to, was saying, look, it doesn't matter what happens. We're not going to be... It doesn't matter what the result is. It doesn't matter if they're losing 5-0 at full-time. They're going to stay till the very final whistle and sing the boys out, because just to be here has been a fantastic, frankly, once-in-a-lifetime experience. So whatever the result, the Welsh fans will be cheering. It'll be interesting to see how the game unfolds. We're expecting a lot of high energy, possibly high quality match. It's going to be fantastic to watch, and it kicks off in just over 4 hours' time.
Possibly high quality for both sides, we should add. For the moment, Paul in the souk, thank you very much indeed for that. More, of course, as the hour approaches for 7 o'clock. But that's been GB News Live with me, Mark Longhurst. We're back tomorrow with the result of that Battle of Britain and Prime Minister's questions as well. So here with you at about 10 to 12. Don't go anywhere, though, because Patrick's up with all the latest coming up after this short break.
We are GB News, and we'd like to say thank you to each and every one of you for bringing us your conversations, for helping our great nation find its voice. We are here for you on radio, television, and online, across England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland.
It's not the BBC, you actually get your facts right.
We are proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Friday and Sunday night from 9, it's Mark Dolan Tonight.
We're on the same page again. There's something weird happening.
Let Ian finish. Don't be such a cranky.
That mini budget was the tip of the iceberg.
And on Saturday, my show just got bigger. From 8, it's Mark Dolan's Saturday Night In.
You can't govern a country if you can't speak.
Stop talking. My God, we reached the end. I've never been early in my life. Only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Hello there, it's Eamon Holmes here from Breakfast on GB News. We're not just on your television and your screens, We're
on DAB plus digital radio, so you can listen to your favourite shows on the move.
If you've not yet listened to GB News Radio, it's very simple. We're on your radio player and tune-in apps, on your smart speaker, phone or tablet, or online at gbnews.uk.
Take us with you wherever you go. GB News Radio.
You never have to miss a moment of the People's Channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
And it's about standards and public life. No, I'll tell you what's hypocrisy, Narendra.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin.
We believe in the UK.
No bias, no censorship.
It just doesn't make sense to me. He wasn't doing his job as Chancellor.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton Tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News.
Yes.